You are now entering a dangerous liberty zone where God-given natural rights are held sacred and exercised. This is your warning. Tyranny, fascism, and censorship will not be tolerated. Ideas will be exchanged freely. Rigorous debate and open discourse is encouraged. If you are weak and your beliefs are fragile, you should leave now. Prepare yourself. We are now live on the Dangerous Liberty Podcast.
What is happening, folks? Hope everybody is having a great Saturday night. I want to say hi to everybody. I wasn't planning on going live tonight, but this story just broke. And I also thought it was a good opportunity to go ahead and just do kind of a Q&A session with you guys. I feel like there was a lot of questions the last couple of shows, maybe not the last one, but the last few shows prior to that we didn't get to, that I wanted to kind of clean up. I also want to give you guys a chance. I even see some questions over there about me. If you guys want to, I don't know, you want to hear about me or have questions about me, right now there's a lot of misinformation going around, even, whether I'm a Fed, paid by Israel, all the other nonsense. How you combat misinformation with truth. So if you guys want to know, I don't know, I'll tell you my whole life story. I don't know, maybe I'm being egotistical to even think that you would want that, but we will do that. So first and foremost, I want to say hi to everybody over in the chat. Thank you guys for coming in. I do want to talk a little bit about the January 6th bombing development. I have some interesting thoughts on that. And as a matter of fact, one of the things that we're going to talk about is I just talked to or chatted with Cal Seraphin. Cal Seraphin has been covering this story for a couple of years now. And anyways, we're going to make sure that we get him on. He wasn't able to make it tonight, but he's going to come on, talk a little bit more about that as well. But I do want to get to you guys. And again, hey, look, one of the things that we're going to talk about every single time is disagreements welcome in any of these shows. I like doing these live so that we can interact with you. I think that's really important, right? I think that's at least what I want to do. And, it's something that most people, there's people that do live shows from time to time. But again, a lot of the news shows and things like that, which is something that I am pretty intent in replacing. I want to make sure that we're doing some really good citizen journalism on the topics that interest me. And there's a lot of them that do interest me. So we're going to do that. And I want to always make sure that I'm being transparent with you guys. You guys know exactly what I'm thinking, give you guys a chance to ask questions of me, get you guys a chance to interact and talk about what questions the public has, as opposed to just me creating a narrative or anybody else, or me only covering the stuff that I want to cover. So that's what we're always going to do. Again, what we're not going to tolerate is name calling. If you're going to do that, we're just going to get you out of the chat. You can go talk on somebody else or just go to a comment somewhere. But yeah, man, it is technically January 5th where that bombing took place. But first thing I want to talk, or not bombing, but where they found the pipe bomb. So one thing I do want to do real quick is just kind of set this up, is I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. We'll go over this recent news story that we have from the Blaze, and I'm going to share that, and we'll go through that real quick, and then I'll talk a little bit more about some of the details of that we've been kind of touching on for the last couple of years with this. But so former Capitol police officer, a forensic match for January 6th pipe bomber, sources say. And I do want to talk a little bit about kind of fact versus fiction, or at least evidence versus opinion. I won't say that this forensic analysis is, it says it matches her gate 94 to 98%. Does that mean that it matches her 94 to 98% as far as the actual truth of this? No, it just means it matches her gate. So I do want to put a caveat on all that stuff. And then I'll talk a little bit more about what I think about this entire event, regardless if this is the exact person or not. January 6th, pipe bomb suspect, according to Blaze News investigation, confirmed by several intelligence sources. A source close to the congressional investigation of January 6th additionally told Blaze News evidence has emerged recently that pointed toward law enforcement possibly being involved in the planting of the bombs. They were effing in on it. A software algorithm that analyzes walking parameters, including flexion, knee bend, hip extension, blah, 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 94% match to this person. CIA woman Liz Lyons stated that the subject worked in campus security. Kirchhoff's residence in Alexandria, Virginia appeared to be under the watch of law enforcement officers on Friday night. Blaze News editor-in-chief Christopher Bedford was pulled over by local police after stopping to observe the home. He was then allowed to leave. The FBI, which failed to solve the case in nearly 5 years of investigation, but indicates that it was closing in on the Blaze after Blaze News brought its investigation to intelligence sources. I want to go back down here to former FBI Special Agent Kyle Seraphin. Realized Friday that he was doing surveillance next door to the woman now suspected of being the January 6th pipe bomber. The FBI put us one door away from the pipe bomber within days of January 6th. We were deliberately pulled away for no logical or logically investigative reason. Seraphin told Blaze on News Friday. And everything that tells me that they were involved in a cover-up and have been since day one. Seraphin proposed doing a knock and talk at the door of an Air Force civilian employee whose address was tied to a vehicle that picked up the bomb suspect in Falls Church, Virginia on January 5th, 2021. Seraphin's team spent 2 days watching the man, but Seraphin's request to go face-to-face with the person of interest was denied. The team was pulled off the case the same night, he said. Seraphin said he was given the same details publicly. He has given the same details publicly since 2021. I will also tell you that Kyle has done multiple shows on this and has been on this since day one. He regularly brings it back up and trying to keep it forefront in the public eye. And I think this is a really important story. Two other sources familiar with the gait analysis who viewed the video comparison and the software analysis told Blaze News they concurred that the video samples matched the gait of the gray hoodie wearing suspect. What gets really interesting is a little bit more down here. Former Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund told Blaze he is eager to learn the results of the pipe and bomb investigation, but he had no awareness of any Capitol Police officer involvement in the pipe planting. Long story short, down here, this person that is suspected, if I read this correct, and I'm pretty sure I did, is now working for the CIA. We can kind of leave it right there. You guys go check this out. It's on the Blaze. I don't want to spend too much time on this. You guys can read this story for yourself. But the fact is, we had a lot of crazy things going on in January 6th. It is my opinion. This is an opinion. I think there's quite a bit of evidence that backs it up. But I do think that January 6th was a operation, multifaceted operation. Not only do I think we had agent provocateurs, whether they were, government agents. I don't even like to use the word FBI because there are a lot of other agencies that kind of colloquially get thrown under that umbrella. We have a lot of different agencies that are doing different things. And I think we saw a DOJ and a federal government that was especially politicized under the Biden administration. I know this for a fact. We saw different things going on where people were appointed, and it wasn't just, these political appointees that were put into positions of power. What we saw that was especially unique in the Biden administration is that we had political activists that couldn't care less about, equal application of the law. They were all about pushing political narratives, pushing political agendas. And, that's my take on that. I do think that it is very likely that this pipe bombing was a false flag operation. And I think other things that were involved in January 6th and months leading up to it that were pushing a narrative of everything like, hey, don't worry about the border. What you really need to worry about is the greatest national national security threat, which is white supremacy, Christian nationalism, all this nonsense, stuff that we know is just factually incorrect. So we're going to keep an eye on that. And like I said, I talked to Kyle. He was going to come on tonight. He couldn't make it tonight, but we're going to have him on the next couple of days. And I'm going to give you I haven't paid as much attention to it as he has. He's going to give you a much more informative view of that. The other thing that I wanted to make you aware of is tomorrow night, we will be doing a live stream. I'll have CJ Carenti on. He's the one that we have now finalized the 3D model. He's going to come on, do a couple things. Number one, he's going to show you exactly how precise some of the tent and other structures. There were things that he was showing me that I didn't even realize. Like, if you go look at some of the pictures, one of the things that he and his team identified is that the front of that tent is actually propped up. And he showed me a picture where the front legs are actually sitting on a couple of different little, I don't even remember what they were, but basically the front of that is higher than the rear of that, which changes perspective in a lot of different ways. But it's little things like that, how they were able to precisely get the measurements of many different elements in that. We're going to go over that. But more importantly, is going to precede us releasing that publicly. I've already given copies of that 3D model to several different content creators, but we're going to make that public tomorrow night to everyone. And we're going to show you how to use it. He's going to take you through a tutorial of making sure your settings are correct. If you download Rhinoceros 8, which is what we're using to view that. I'm still learning how to use that. It is not the most user-friendly, but it is extremely detailed. And I think it's going to help us get rid of a lot of misinformation. It'll help us to establish what we know to be true. It'll help you to figure out, if someone's lying to you or anything else. I mean, we've got, whether it's the FBI, whether it's the U.S. government, whether it's Utah authorities, or whether it's social media at large, our enemy is misinformation. Our enemy is lies, and we got to get to the truth. And that's what this show is all about. I don't care about a narrative. If we find out tomorrow that we have good evidence that, I don't know, space aliens with lasers were behind the Charlie Kirk assassination, I'm going to be on board. But, all this stuff needs to be fact-based, needs to be logical. And that's what we're going to do on the show each and every time. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up to some Q&A here. And no, that's not what I want. And we already got a super chat. David, thank you very much. I appreciate that. One thing I did want to tell you guys, I've mentioned it a couple times in the past, we are investing heavily to where we are doing this at we're kind of reorienting our my entire business model, or whatever else you want to call it. I want to pursue this. I want to make sure that we're bringing truth to, I don't even know if you want to call it citizen journalism or whatever else, but I feel like this is what we need to be doing for right now. And so this is not something that I focus on monetizing, and I don't really care about the money, but the fact is that if we are going to be taking time, resources, and everything else from our business, which is really what funds us, we need to make it a sustainable model. So your support is appreciated, and we are offering memberships if you want to support us that way. Anyways, all right. So let's get up here. I'm going to go through some. Do you like chicken, Gary? We're starting already. I do like chicken. Chicken's delicious. Everything has a little bit of chicken in it, right? Can't you be on time, Gary? It was 8 p.m., but it wasn't till 8:01 till you came on, LOL. I'll work on that, the greater good. Do you ever think about getting back into knife making? I do, actually. It's something that I probably would like to do. I don't know that I'll get into handmade custom knives. Eventually what I want to do, I'm a knife nut. Eventually what I'd like to do is take my own designs, which I still have a bunch of them for when I was making knives, custom knives. And I'll probably get into some mid-tech, high-end production knife making, to where we have, the same standards that I was expecting when I was hand making knives. But we'll bring those to a kind of a niche, higher end, manufacturing process, which is tough to do. Bronson, funny story. Gray just had Jack Posobiec in his live chat and didn't know who he was. Well, if Jack Posobiec comes into this live chat, we will know who he is. And by the way, I'd like to have Jack on sometime. Be interesting to see him. I know he's not popular amongst some people on the right, but generally speaking, I think he's, like we just got to quit doing that, man. I'm just so sick of this where we have all this division just because we disagree on some really finer points. Desiree C. What's up, Gary and team from Hill Country, Texas? Been a cold 89 degrees today, 60 on Sunday. LOL. Yeah, I'm from Beaumont, Texas. For people that don't know, I grew up there. I was originally born in the Detroit area. I moved to Texas when I was 10. That's where I grew up. It's what I consider home. Every now and then when I do go back to Michigan to visit family, I'm like, folks, why are you guys still living here in the Detroit area? Look, the rest of Michigan is beautiful. There's some issues in the Detroit area, that's for sure. Yeah, hey, if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit the like, subscribe, all those things. I don't know how long we're going to stay on here tonight. I don't have an agenda or anything else. The other big thing I want to announce is I did talk to Blake Bednarz yesterday. If you don't know who Blake is, Blake believes that there was some sort of exploding device on the mic. He believes that's what killed Charlie. I will say the biggest difference between Blake and a lot of other people out there pushing narratives and things like that is, again, I spent a lot of time on the phone with him. Look, Blake's a serious person. He's an intelligent guy. I disagree. He knows I disagree with him, but he wants to come on and talk about that and kind of give his side of the story and just to get a chance to explain what it is that he believes happened. Like, I want to give him the platform to do that. I think generally speaking, he's a really great guy. And, and I'm going to challenge him on some stuff. I'm not going to beat him up or anything like that. He knows how I do things, but, I don't know, maybe he can convince us that that's exactly what took place, but we'll see. But, I'd love to have him on and talk to him and kind of see where his head's at anyway. Stephen Vacanti, he's really nice. He always hits the like button twice. You know what? Hold on. I'm going to fix this framing. I feel like I'm a million miles away. I was shooting a video earlier. Oh, that's another thing I will say. If you're not subscribed to our newsletter, I'm going to make a real effort. And today I did. I released a video that was exclusive to our newsletter. It was firearms related. You can go check that out. So there's that. Gary, yours is the only reasonable, rational channel regarding the Kirk assassination. Thanks for that. You're welcome, JP6 Gunner. And I've always been interested in the news. I've always been interested in politics and kind of current affairs and all of that. What I want to do is build a team together to where we can give you guys, I don't think, we're not going to turn into cable news, and we're not likely to start doing a show every single night. But I think on the big shows that matter, that's what I would like to do, is make sure that we have a team of people that can bring you content, bring you information, and we're going to be as truthful as possible. We're going to stick to facts. And, it's a one of those things that, like Fox News used to say, we're going to give you the information and let you decide. Right. And, have people come on here that can challenge our process or our thoughts and opinions and all those things. I do think it's really important to talk about and to see multiple sides of this. And I'm going to give you an example on that. I've been thinking really hard the last few days about the Israel debate. I would say that I'm in the past, and I would say even now, look, I'm generally pro-Israel. I think there's some strategic relationships going on there. And I know that that is not in vogue necessarily right now. With that being said, I do think there's some good information there. And then I was thinking about, how do I really feel about Israel and why? And here's what I'll tell you. the more I thought about it, the more that I realized, like, my opinion of Israel is a patchwork of information. Like, I've heard a little bit of this over here. I've heard a little bit of this over here. And, you know, my opinion may go one way or the other at any given time because of what's going on and the information that I've heard. What I will freely admit is that I don't know that I am super educated on the entire history. Look, I understand the history of Israel, but I'm just saying, look, there's some people out there that are in some really nuance and into the details on either side of the Israel debate. I will say, generally speaking, what I believe is that we are $37 trillion in debt, and that we shouldn't be providing all of the foreign aid that we do to any country. I will also, kind of a balanced point to that is, like, Israel, there's nothing you can do to convince me that Israel's our biggest problem. I think there potentially is some problems with that. Even when we talk about AIPAC and things like that, yeah, I don't like some of the money and the foreign influence in our politics. But that being said, I'm not sure that AIPAC's the biggest problem we have with lobbying either. I have a bigger problem right now with some of the corporate lobbies when we're talking about prescription drugs and many other things. But to my original point, you know what I would like? I would almost like to hear a complete, and this is just, you know, hypothetical, right? I know this isn't going to happen. I would like to hear the best case scenario in a very detailed, and maybe it's just a matter of me making sure that I really dig in and get educated on this. But I'd like to hear something from, like, Ben Shapiro, where he makes the best case from A to Z of why we should be very supportive of Israel. And then I would like to see, I don't know, someone like Ian Carroll even Nick Fuentes give us the worst case scenario of why we shouldn't support Israel and all the damage they're doing. And then from those two things, sit down and come up with a reasonable opinion, because I think there's huge information gaps on either side of that, at least for me. And I think, generally speaking, that's true for America and Americans in general. So, you know, that's the type of information that I would like to see us provide, is so that you can see both sides of this argument, because I think they're relevant, and that's just one of 10,000 issues that we have here in America that you're going to hear kind of this two-sided argument for, or three-sided or four-sided. And I think we need to do a better job of educating ourselves, educating America, and trying to figure out what is fact and what is fiction, what is propaganda, what is truth, what is misinformation. And, you know, that's kind of what I'd like to see done on this channel. And that's the direction that I'd like to see us head. All right, I'm getting some of your other questions here. The greater good. JP600, no, he follows the FBI narrative. LMAO. I don't follow any narrative. I follow evidence and facts. And what I can tell you is, after 2 months, the most compelling evidence, the most logical thing is right now is what we're seeing in the charging documents. That's not an FBI narrative. That's an evidence narrative. Now, if you want to believe something else, or you can even put together a good, compelling argument or anything else, you can come on my show and talk about it. But what I can tell you is, I'm not going to abandon a mountain of evidence to go to another theory that has significantly less evidence for it, or no evidence for it, or a lot of evidence against it. That's illogical. That makes no sense. And I think it's foolish to do so. So it's not about narratives. It's about evidence and facts. And that's what we're going to stick with on this show. And again, you know, I'm going to have anybody come on the show that can make a good, compelling argument and give us, I don't know, present facts that I'm willing to change at any time. Darren Beatty from Revolver News has been covering this since it happened. Don't know who he is. I'll check it out. Like AMX said, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, go jump on our newsletter. Thanks to all the vets for your service. Honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I know most just say it, though. Say to say it. Y'all don't get enough from our country. Well, thank you. And, you know, what I will say is, man, there are so many people out there that have given so much to this country. I'm very fortunate. I still have my health. I still have my mind. I still have all the parts of my body. I appreciate you being grateful. And, you know, there's so many people out there that, you know, have obviously they've, you know, committed suicide. They're dealing with mental health issues. They're dealing with family issues. They're dealing with relationship issues, alcohol, and other substance abuse issues. It's one of those stories that doesn't get enough. Like, we know it's there, but we don't really, I don't know. We've become jaded to the point that we no longer do that much about it. Does Gary like anime? I'm actually kind of a huge anime fan. I usually people are gonna, I've been watching anime since I was like, I don't know, in my early teens, and I still watch it, and that's one of the things. My 15-year-old son, he's gotten into anime, so that's one of the things that we kind of share. I have a hard time sleeping at night, and I've had insomnia for many years. But anyways, that's one of the things I'll put on. It's just enough to keep my mind from, I don't know, worrying, not worrying, but just anyways, keep my mind going crazy. And it gives me enough to pay attention to it, but not so much that, I don't know, anyways, a false, but yeah, I am a big anime fan. Hope these aren't the same people that said Tyler Robinson limped because he is partially paralyzed. Like, that was just another one of the many dumb things that has come out that's continued to push these. We get these really bad theories that come out, and then people, once you start proving them wrong, they come up with all of this other crazy stuff to keep perpetuating them. And I don't understand it. It's dishonest, but I also think that I don't know, it's something to do with people's psyche where, you know, they're so against the government narrative or whatever. It is a bias, and our biases are our worst enemies for sure. We need to pay attention to that. No, not that one. Not that one, Pete. Or pro level. That's why the guy in the video in Utah was walking the way he was. There was a rifle in his pants trying to trick gait recognition. Hit the happily acknowledged. Yeah, I totally think that the January 6th pipe bomb whole situation was a false flag. I really do. And again, it was meant to push narrative. Our own agencies are behind 98% of the events that have occurred in the last century, and there's a ton of us been saying that for decades. Everyone just calls us crazy. I generally agree with that, Stephen. The key here is to know that while we definitely have this adversarial relationship with our own country and the agencies and institutions that make it up, we also need to be aware that we have other enemies and other problems at play as well. And again, the key here is we can't just get so myopic on worrying about the government tricking us that we lose sight of the fact that there's a lot of other forces at play that are trying to trick us, whether it's other foreign adversaries, whether it's political adversaries, whether it's ideologically driven organizations, corporations, and everything else. We're being tricked all over the place, and it's to our detriment. And anytime we need to be the enemy of misinformation, wherever that misinformation comes from. And so what I don't want to do is reject or get to the point to where, like, I won't believe them no matter what. I'm going to go over here, and even though that this 2% of the time that they're telling the truth, I'm going to reject that 2% of the time, which could be very critical, and I'm going to go over here and get tricked by these guys over here. That's not what I want to do, and that's not what I want you to do either. Yeah, look, there's no doubt to me that Antifa was there. I mean, the double standard that we saw during the George Floyd riots in comparison to what we saw at January 6th. Look, there were some people that I think definitely got caught up in the emotion of it all and did some things wrong. None of it compares to what we saw during the George Floyd riots. As a matter of fact, even when they had the riots there in D.C., I mean, there were hundreds of federal employees and officers and Capitol Police and Secret Service that were injured. And that wasn't seen as an insurgency or, that they were trying to take over the government or anything else. They had to put, the Secret Service ended up putting Trump into a bunker during that time period. So I hate the false equivalency or the lack of equivalency. Like that everything they did with George Floyd, they completely wrote off as completely okay. People are just trying to get out of their system. They have the right to be upset. But then when we're talking about potentially, and I still believe that our elections were stolen in 2020. I believe that wholeheartedly. I think there was a huge amount of election fraud that took place. And when people are upset about that, now they get put in jail for years without trial. They're stuck in solitary confinement. Even if you were walking around there, they find your cell phone and then end up contacting you 6 months later and throw you in jail. It's nuts what happened during January 6th. I will tell you this. I mean, to me, that is one of the greatest points of the Second Amendment amongst all our other rights, is like we need to always be able to have the capacity to resist a tyrannical government. Yeah, there's some problems there without a doubt. But again, the FBI, the CIA, look, there's many other agencies and sub-organizations that we need to be aware of as well. All right, Darlene asks a relevant question. Darlene says, who was president January 6th in 2021 and before? Well, Donald J. Trump was. But the problem that we had is that we had a deep state. We had a literal insurgency taking place within the entire federal government. We had these political actors that were stopping him or attempting to stop him. And for all intents and purposes, they were committing treason. They were going against the executive branch and doing everything could to stop them from getting things done, looking for different ways to prosecute him, looking for different ways to hem him up. And like, you can't have the federal government working against the president. You can't believe in democracy, and we're not a democracy. And I don't want to get into that semantical debate, but most Democrats, and I'm assuming, Darlene, and I could be wrong, that you're a Democrat, you believe in democracy. That means that once we elect a leader, that the entire federal government is supposed to get behind them, unless they are doing something illegal. And then there are challenges that can be had, and we had plenty of them. And we're going to, the Republicans definitely challenged Biden in many different areas, not nearly as aggressively, obviously, not nearly as much as they should have, in my opinion. So there's that. Dark Watch, Gary, please, dude, no more tinfoil hat guests like Kelly. All right, here's what I want to say about that is, look, we have to be able to have discourse with people that we disagree with. I do think that Kelly is a good representation and kind of a look into the mind of a lot of people out there that, believe a lot of different theories. And, a lot of this stuff is kind of started, and I don't know, inspired by a few different social media stars out there. They've convinced a lot of people through insinuation that certain people are guilty, that certain, and quite frankly, like I don't even know that we can put our finger on some of the theories or a specific theory that these people believe. They float a few different things constantly. Hey, it's TPUSA. And no, I'm not just talking about Candace. Obviously, she does fall into that category. But, you know, TPUSA, it's Israel, it's Egypt. Like, we're bouncing around. I never quite see what they believe or what evidence they have. And the other thing that I have a real problem with some of these folks are doing is they're accusing through innuendo. They never quite come out and say specifically what the accusation is, but every viewer walks away knowing exactly what they're talking about, and they might as well have. And that's what the viewer thinks. And then the viewer goes off and is in the comments, hey, this person killed him because, you know, this person said it. And that's another thing too. People that follow a lot of these different people, I'll see them down in the comments. Well, you know, Candace said this, and then I go look, and Candace never actually said that. She definitely insinuated some of these things. And again, I would love to have a conversation with Candace in case I'm mischaracterizing what she's saying. I don't think I am. She was number one, you know, she was the number one podcaster right now. So whatever she's doing, it's working, for better or for worse. But we gotta have these conversations. And I think the more that we're on either side of whatever issue that they're open to this, the more that we can, you know, fact check each other, sanity check one another, and at least within kind of the same conversation, provide, you know, an alternative or some of the different options, or challenge those people when they're saying, oh, this is what happened. Well, also, hey, couldn't this also be a possibility as well? Even a more likely possibility than what you're suggesting, because you're kind of suggesting that the worst case possibility with the least likelihood of actually taking place. And I think that's where a lot of this misinformation is coming from. Okay. Darlene, we're just going to have to disagree on that. I mean, I think there was never a more corrupt regime than Biden's regime. I mean, he wasn't even president. Not really. I mean, he was Weekend at Bernie's. He was a figurehead that could barely find his way off the stage. I mean, those are facts. Yeah, JP6 Gunner, we'll be putting that out tomorrow. I should have links to where that's available tomorrow, but more importantly, we'll be taking you through a tutorial of how that works so that you make sure that you have all the settings in place that you're supposed to, and it works as it should. But that'll be good. Trump had 2 weeks to blanket pardon J6ers, and he sat on his hands and let them rot. Disgusting. Here's what I would say if I was president, is no matter how I felt about a situation, I think as president, and when you're using the powers of pardon, you need to go through those case by case. And I do think that you need to be careful about what you do. I think some of those people should have definitely been pardoned immediately. With that being said, we're talking about the federal government, and there's also politics at play and other things like that. There's some things that you need to do tactically and strategically that I understand takes longer than it should. That being said, I'm not giving President Trump a complete pardon on his lack of action on that as well. There's still a bunch of people that need to be pardoned, that should be taken care of, that haven't been. And I do find it concerning, to say the least. So I think a lot of that criticism is well placed. All right. Blake Cooper says, blame the Jews. You have a 99.9% chance of being right. What none of you are ever going to convince me of is this idea that, well, let's frame this a different way. First of all, the Jewish people are probably the most diverse, and you have, I don't know, the greatest range of personality, politics, and everything else across a population that claims to be Jewish, right? So from religion to politics and everything else, they're one of the least monolithic groups on our planet. I'm just going to say it. I think, when you go from criticizing Israel, which that's a political thing, that's a geopolitics issue. There's nothing wrong with having these discussions about Israel. When you start to conflate that with Jewish people, when you're talking about a people that are completely diverse from, again, some of them are extremely left, some of them are completely hate Israel as well, some of them are very religious, some of them don't even really claim to be religious. They're more of a ethnic, they consider themselves more ethnically Jewish than religiously. Like, I think you need to do some soul searching, because I do think that is bigoted. You have the right to do it, and you still have freedom of speech. I just think that it's morally wrong once we just start blaming an entire people for something. And Blake, maybe you're joking around, but I'll say that there's a lot of people that feel that way, and I just think that is the root of that is very evil to begin with. It's un-American for sure. Not all Jewish people are the same. I know it's hard to believe, but they're not the same. They think differently. They believe differently. They're as diverse as the American population, and probably even more so. So there's that. Trump is a New York Democrat, debt-loving, Fed-loving, con artist, and lockdown dictator. I'll take him over Biden any day of the week. Night Force NXA 2.5 to 20 or Mark 5 HD. Sean, I wouldn't we're a Leupold dealer. I wouldn't recommend anything from Leupold right now. I think they have some major quality control issues. Depending on what you're going to, Sean, shoot me an email, services@paramountTactical.com. We'll have that discussion in depth. And I definitely wouldn't recommend, there's a lot of scopes I would actually recommend over that are better. Either one of those that are better, that are cheaper. Yeah. So shoot me an email, services@paramountTactical.com, and I'll take care of you on that. Donnie MC, I think you do really good at this. You keep my interest through the entire show. Some lives can be so dull. Thanks. I don't know what to say. Thank you. I just want to know cheaper Bronco. I would take a Bronco over a Jeep, but I have a real issue with Ford right now. I have a 2017 Ford F350 single rear wheel diesel. Man, I bought that truck. I have had nothing but issues. And when I went to go get multiple warranty claims, we had issues with the dealer, issues with Ford. Some of the things that they did were some of the most just sleazeball tactics, both from Ford and both from the dealership. So you won't see me buying a Ford anytime soon. We ended up having to do a lawsuit, and we settled. It worked out okay, but you're not going to see me buying a Ford anytime soon. I'll tell you that. And I definitely won't be buying a Jeep. They're one of the, well, I'll just say, when it comes to reliability, you're probably better off with the Ford. Yeah, Trump also banned bump stocks by dictatorial edict. Okay, I agree with you on that. I think that I don't think, look, again, man, so much of this stuff is just not black and white, right? Look, Trump has never been a super strong Second Amendment proponent. We've gotten a lot of things passed in a positive way under Trump because he had some people underneath him that were. Like, if it was up to Trump, you would never hear anything being pushed as far as expanding our rights on the Second Amendment and making sure that our Second Amendment is actually being protected the way that it should be, the way that our founders intended. You know, Trump's just not a Second Amendment guy. He's not. He's from New York. He's like, like the average New Yorker that thinks they're a gun proponent, but they'll say some things like, you don't need more than 10 rounds, but everybody should have a gun. Like, just shut up. So generally speaking, I don't want people to lose sight of this, because I do think that people are. Like, I think that this Charlie Kirk situation has driven such a political wedge against the right and against Trump from the right, or at least many portions of the right, that, like, if there was another election today between Biden, Harris, or Trump, I think that a lot of Republicans would stay home because of some of the misinformation that was put out, because of this entire investigation. Like, it's had a major political impact. So if there's political actors that are pushing some of this misinformation, they're being more effective than I think they ever thought they would be. We are so much better than we were under Biden. Like, I mean, number one, like, if we got nothing else, we got the borders pretty much closed. All right. We have completely stopped the flow of mass immigration into our country, illegal immigration. So that alone right there, there's a lot of things that Trump could be doing better that I could sit here and criticize all night, but I'm still thankful that we won that election. And I'm thankful that Harris, because however bad you guys think it is, and all the things that you can criticize Trump, there were significantly worse options, and there still is. And we need to keep that first and foremost in our mind. Pete's got all the crazy questions tonight. Do I use scissors to open a bag of chips? I never use scissors to open a bag of chips, but one of the things that my wife did, I don't know, 15 years ago, that I do all the time now, is one day we're trying to eat chips and you reach down there, next thing you know, she went and got scissors and cut it off after it's open and you're down at the bottom of the bag. Yeah, I do that sometimes. So there you go. Gary would win. Gary would unfortunately probably break Jack's arm. We need a great Hughes Kelly Robin live stream. No. All right, so are you still going to do the video with the body armor and old ammunition that you talked about a while back? I genuinely believe at this point that I was incorrect on the body armor. I have a really good source on that. I think, I think it was just incorrect. If I do, because I have the body armor, I've spent the money on the body armor's sitting over here. If I do that, it's going to be one of the last things that I do, because I pretty much know for a fact there was no ballistic protection. You see how I do that though? Like, again, from the beginning, I said, hey, this is speculation. This is what I think based on what I see. And then when new information comes around, I change my mind. I don't stay stuck on something because I'm not emotionally tied to any one narrative. And some people just can't let things go, no matter what, because they are emotionally tied to a narrative. And, their whole persona is wrapped up in that. I'm not. I'm more important. The truth is definitely more important to me than being right. So with that being said, one of the things I was going to do today is do some ballistic testing. I didn't get to it today because of some other work requirements. I'm going to try to do that tomorrow. We're going to start a very extensive scientific-based testing regimen, and we're going to go through a lot of 30-06 ammunition. So there's going to be lots of ballistic testing. If I do any testing with body armor, I think it'll be toward the end. I don't think I was correct on that one, to be honest with you, Disney. Where is Lance Twiggs? Lance Twiggs is in either protective custody or in custody, one of the two. I think he's in protective custody, and I think he's turned state evidence against his boyfriend. I think we're going to see his testimony, but, that's the way that protective custody works, is people don't know where they're at. Oh, I'm missing all kinds of super chats over here. Sorry, folks. Matt Martin, do you hunt any game? I don't get to hunt very often. I like hunting. I enjoy hunting. What often happens to me, Matt, is I'll get geared up to go hunting in a season, and the next thing I know, it's freaking January and hunting season's over. I just stay so busy. I would love to hunt more. I would love to have the time to hunt more. I would say in the next 10 years, when I can slow down a little bit, me and my boys are going to take lots of hunting trips to where we can dedicate the time in that. I did go like 2 years ago down to Texas, went on a hunting trip there. One of the best hunting trips I ever have been on, the best hunting trip that I've ever been on, is I actually did get to go moose hunting in Alaska in 2010, I believe. I was up on the Knik Glacier. I would love to go back there, go moose hunting, shoot a bear. I would love to be able to hunt more. And I really do need to take my boys hunting. Neither one of them have ever been hunting, and I'm ashamed to say that, but something I do want to have time to do, and I just don't. I work way too much. George Floyd was injustice in law enforcement compared to an attempt to overthrow a democratic election. Well, I disagree with both of those characterizations. You know what? I'll give you yours, Jeff. George Floyd was a perceived injustice in law enforcement. I think that is another really good example of how misinformation can be used politically. I don't think that Derek Chauvin killed George Floyd. I think that some of the toxins in his system and other circumstances, he was having trouble breathing before Derek Chauvin got on him. I do think that Derek Chauvin potentially contributed. It definitely didn't help. But as far as we know, like, he had some major, he had fentanyl and other things in his system, if I remember correctly. So I believe that he probably would have died. Now, with that being said, folks, here's one of the things that I've been wanting to do a podcast on for a long time that I have a real issue with. I will stay up at night and I will watch these First Amendment audits and things like that. And I love law enforcement. All right. We train law enforcement. I've worked in the training capacity for a federal agency, training law enforcement. Huge fan of law enforcement. With that being said, there's definitely a culture where law enforcement not only are trained to, but it is applauded when you intentionally try to violate people's rights, whether it's their First Amendment right, their Fourth Amendment, their Fifth Amendment. And I think that's a real problem. Because here's the thing, when you have law enforcement, which their first and foremost oath and duty is to the Constitution, to protect and defend the Constitution, they should have the obligation to protect and defend the rights of the people that they are being. We have placed you with our authority. You do not have authority on your own. We, the people, have given you authority. We've given you a badge, and with the trust that you are going to be fair, to not become a tyrant. And I have a real problem with some of the standard operating law enforcement procedures, how they will trick you to give up your rights. They will trick you and into violating your rights. And there's a whole host of things that I have a problem with. So I do think that there needs to be some reform in that area. With that being said, we don't need to throw out the baby with the bathwater. Like, law enforcement is important. If we're going to have laws, they need to be enforced. But we also need to find a better way to go about doing that. And then when you have these, typically when we have, like, most of these problem officers, I'm not even saying Derek Chauvin was one of them, by the way, but when we have these problem officers, they have typically been identified as they've been under investigation multiple times. They've all these crazy things that end up culminating to somebody dying. And then when the police department is getting sued, or the city's getting sued, now they finally fire them. I have a problem with that. My loyalty is always to the Constitution. It really, like, it doesn't get any simpler than that. Like, if you want to know what I'm about the American Constitution. All right. And I think, and I believe that should be read as it is stated, as its original intent. And that's what I believe. So, but I disagree that what you're saying here, Jeffrey, is that it was an attempt to overthrow a democratic election. It was people protesting the fact that there almost guaranteed was significant amount of voter fraud. And the problem that we have with voter fraud is that voter fraud is extremely easy to pull off, and it's very hard to prove because we have no real checks and balances in it. So there's that. And then the other problem that I have with the entire 2024 election is that there was no media. There was no even senators on the Republican side. Number one, a lot of the Senate and the House, a lot of the Trump politicians and Republican politicians hated Trump rather. So they didn't really care. They didn't really care, and there was no interest in investigating it. There was a few entities that did investigate it and found rampant voting fraud, and some of those people were prosecuted, even though what they provided was real evidence. And I think it's a real problem, and we still don't have secure elections in our country. We don't. So I disagree with you completely, Jeffrey, on the last part of that. No one was trying to overthrow the government. They were trying to make their voices heard, that they felt disenfranchised by Washington because our election system isn't secure. The problem is that the evidence presented in charging documents and to the public by the government has significant holes in the details. I would like to know what those holes in the details are. Snipper. Yeah, I would like you to tell me what those holes are. If there was election fraud in 2020, how did all the court cases fail at 100%, even by Trump appointed judges? Look, again, the problem that I see, well, there's two things here. First of all, it is very difficult to find evidence of, like, we're not doing anything to ensure that our elections are secure. Like, we have no checks and balances on that whatsoever. So it's very difficult to provide evidence that fraud is taking place to begin with. And on top of that, I think that it was at such a massive scale that, like, you would spend years and years and years. The other thing that you're not going to see a judge do, and I've actually talked to different lawyers, judges, and things like that. One of the things that a judge is going to avoid is setting some sort of precedent that overturns an election and or overturns or undermines the entire electoral process. So, like, we've got to get this secure. I think that election would have come out very differently if we required voter ID. There is no good explanation as to why we in the United States don't have voter ID. Come the F on. Like, we require ID for everything. And to try to say that it's going to disenfranchise, minorities or whatever else, that is a BS excuse. They can get it for free. They can come into, just like we have to get a driver's license, just like you have to show some sort of ID to buy cigarettes, to get on a plane, to do anything in this country, you have to have an ID. And you're telling me that we can't at least expect that for elections? If you are someone that's arguing against any sort of voter ID or requiring ID for voting, you are BSing everybody around you. We're onto it. You want voter fraud. You know that the Democrat Party is winning elections through voter fraud, and you want it to continue. There is no other excuse for it. And anything else you say is a complete lie. There's that. Let's see here. Don't bug me. Now I understand why Jewish people tend to be so defensive. Hold on. Is it anti-Israeli if you agree with the American First thing? I want us to put a pause on all foreign funding until we fix key domestic issues in the country. No, like, I'm with you, bro. Like, no, that's not anti-Israel or anti-Semitic or anything else. Like, I'm with you. Like, we can't afford we have 42 million people on SNAP that can't afford to feed themselves. That is either a people are lazy in America problem, or it's an economic problem because we don't have enough jobs. I don't know. It's a huge problem. All right. That is I don't know what the SNAP benefits just in that piece alone, but I'm sure it's several $billion. Like, we can't afford to provide welfare support to every country in the world, especially a country like Israel that seems to be able to make it on their own. I do think that they have become used to our help, and we obviously subsidize their military, subsidize their capabilities. And, just objectively speaking, I will say that they have a lot of enemies in the Middle East, right? That want Israel gone. And for those out there that would say, well, when we created Israel, we shouldn't have done that. Well, okay. I mean, I don't know. We can go back to the founding of every country and we can, relitigate that every single time. The fact is, we are where we are. Israel does exist. I think they have a right to exist. If you want to call me a Zionist because I think that Israel has the right to exist as a nation state, well, call me a Zionist. I'm a Zionist. But no, I'm with you 100%, Mo. I think we have invested way too much of Americans' hard-earned dollars in other countries. Like, we've got to stop. We've got to stop unless it is extremely, it has to be justified in some sort of extreme nature that it is to our benefit and we are receiving some sort of significant return on that investment or something along those lines. We have got to quit being, the handout, the charity for the world. Like, all we're doing is we're sucking Americans dry. And I don't blame a lot of people out there that are on welfare and other benefits. Man, I can tell you as a business owner, it freaking sucks the way that between state, local, federal regulations, fees, taxes, all of those things. Like, it would be so much easier to just like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to live on 30 grand a year in, subsidized housing. I can retire and at least still live and not have to work a day in my life. Because if not, if you're a business owner, you're a small business owner like me and my wife, we work 70, 80 hours a week, and pay a ton of taxes. And then it pisses me off that those taxes that I'm working myself to death to pay for are all going to other countries. Instead of, I'd much rather those go to veterans here in the United States that are dealing with problems, or fellow Americans that are having issues, or whatever, man, like paying for our roads. I would love it. You wouldn't hear me complain about taxes if all they did was go to fix American problems. But that's not what's happening. We're not just fixing American problems. We're fixing the world's problems, and they're sucking us dry. Like, all of the rest of the world is a freaking parasite on the United States, generally speaking. All right. And there might be some hyperbole there, but forgive me. Thank you, S. Brown. Thoughts on Mondani and the shutdown? Yeah. I don't know, man. As far as Mondani, you get who you vote for. That's what New York wanted. That's what they're going to get, and all the problems that go with it. The shutdown's ridiculous. I don't know. Like, we've got to figure out a better system here. I don't think that ending the filibuster is the answer. I'll get back to you on that, S. Brown. That's something I haven't put together I haven't thought about a bunch, to be honest with you. Who changed your mind on body armor? Did they cut Charlie's shirt off or present win? Sorry, missed the show on this. Stay safe. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to have a guest on pretty soon. That was right there. This is a person that was there at that event, that was up close and personal with Charlie. And I asked him this question. He assured me that he did not have any body armor. And I believe him, and I think that's true. But you'll hear more about that guest in the next week or so for sure. 2,000 Mules shows large-scale voter fraud evidence. I watched the show. I think it was extremely compelling. If you don't think that there's voting fraud in America, at least watch 2,000 Mules. I think they provide a lot of good evidence, and they show how they get that evidence and everything else. So I think that is, you at least need to know that. And see, this is what I'm talking about. This is the problem that we have, people have in general, but we as Americans definitely have too. It's like, once we determine a paradigm, right? This is like, if you're the person, I don't care if it's Charlie Kirk theory of the charging documents correct or not correct. It was drones, it was a palm, whatever, right? You're being dishonest to yourself when you won't listen to the other side. And this is kind of what I was talking about at the beginning of the show, is like, we've got to have that conversation if we're going to be intellectually honest with each other and with ourselves. Because if we don't listen to what someone else has to say and we reject everything, and I have been guilty of this my whole life. There's lots of things that once I started diving into and seeing that there is certain evidence against something that I believed my entire life to be true, I'm like, wow. And, I just want to know the truth. I don't want to get mired in mud of nonsense and make-believe, and none of us should. So, this is just a great example. If you haven't watched that show, you should, so you at least hear the evidence that is presented for and making the case for the fact that there is massive voting fraud here in America, and it's systematic, and it's a real thing. It really is. I left some things in the chat, but if you have an email, I'll send you what I think are significant problems with the case. Sure. I do have an email. You guys can contact me at dlpodcast@paramountTactical.com. dlpodcast@paramountTactical.com. I think that's one of the most important things that we can do is for someone that believes differently than me, specifically on the Charlie Kirk case, but really on any topic, like, let's have that conversation. And I want to kind of see where your head's at. No, so 0. I wish you had completed a full reading of my super chat. What if I just clicked it off right there? That'd be funny. I wouldn't do it to you, 0. And I didn't mean to not read your entire super chat earlier. If I did, I just kind of got caught up in the moment. Was DJT caught hot on a record line asking the Georgia elect or to find a certain number of votes? Yeah, he was. I remember that very vividly. He was like, you need to find those votes. What I took that as, and I think most reasonable people it wasn't him saying that, hey, I want you to go out and find votes that don't exist. He felt like he won Georgia. That's what he's saying. He's like, hey, these votes we have more votes. And they had a lot of different analytics going on where, they felt very confident that they won Georgia. So he's like, hey, go find those votes that are there. That's going to be the answer. I know you don't want to accept that if you're on the other side of this argument, and I get it. That's fine. You don't have to, but I believe that's what he was saying. And I know that every person you've listened to, because again, we put ourselves in these echo chambers, convince us that something is being said that's not being said, or they interpret it one way and it's the least charitable way. I mean, you got to at least admit that could be one way 50-50 and admit that. But again, if you've heard that 1,000 times, you've heard that played over 1,000 times by the Rachel Maddows of the world and everybody else on MSNBC and CNN and The View and everywhere else. And like, this is what he said. This is what he meant, because they can read the mind of Donald Trump and again, Donald Trump is one of the people that have been taken out of context more than anybody else. He says some wild shit. I'll be the first one to admit that. But like, a lot of the times, even the wild shit that he's saying has been taken out of context. Like, so I just think we all need to make sure that we're taking a more honest analysis of some of these things that are being discussed. I don't know. My mouse stopped working. What's going on here? It's charged. Let me turn it off, turn it back on. Been having an issue with this. All right, let me see if I got another mouse. I know I have another mouse. See, gotta have primary. All right, you gotta have a backup plan for everything, even a mouse. Primary, alternate, contingency, emergency. So we are good to go there. Let's see. Back to comments. Moski, thank you. As a fellow Christian, I just feel like I'm stepping on eggshells sometimes, and it's tricky. Are you having Ian Carroll on soon? Me and Ian Carroll were talking about him coming on this week, and it'll probably be early next week or something like that. Yeah, we're definitely going to have him on. Again, I get busy. I engage with somebody, then I get busy and doing 50 other things, and I'm also like working on the projects or the people that we plan on having on last week. And then I'm like, oh, I haven't talked to Ian Carroll today. And anyways, we will have him on. So there's that. Yeah, you shouldn't feel like, here's what we all need to do. When we have these ideas that we're worried about or whatever else, first of all, that's why I want to have this show and why I want to be able to do this stuff live to where you guys can engage with us and talk is, run it by your friends and people that you trust. If you're not in a church, I highly recommend that you get into a church, find something. And if nothing else, find some sort of community, whether it's religious or not. I mean, the fact is we are social creatures and we are becoming less and less social, and we're getting stuck and we're creating our own, we're all suffering a little bit from some mental disorder from just being stuck on these devices, right? We need to become more social. I don't know, find a sport that you're into, find a men's group, women's group. I don't know, find something, get out of the house, go have some friends. Because it's true. Like a lot of people don't even have friends that they can talk to and run things. I'm not saying that you don't, Mo. I'm just saying in general, like we are more connected than ever and more isolated as individuals than ever before, even from our own family. I mean, how many of you, I'm guilty of this, we'll be sitting, the entire family will be sitting in the living room, but we're all 50 different places and we're worlds apart from each other because we're all on the couch, different couches, different seats, and we're in this device down here. We're not even aware of each other at all. And, this stuff isn't even real. We've got to learn to make better human connections. We got to get better at this. Doesn't Israel funding come back in intelligence? I'm sure some of it does. With that being said, look, what we can exchange for intelligence from Israel is our own intelligence. Like we are the world's peacekeeper. We're providing military aid, military protection to 90% of the world. And look, I'm not necessarily calling for all funding to be cut from Israel or any other country. I'm saying like there's excess in everything that we do. We are wasting money left and right. Once we start a fund that goes to another country or a government program, even here in the United States, it never shrinks. We never sit back and say, hey, you know what? That wasn't a good investment. If it's not working, like in the corporate world, if we funded something that didn't work, we'd be like, hey, that didn't work. We're not getting an ROI on that. Like we got to stop funding it. Now, what we say is, you know what? We need to double the money that we're putting in on that. And that doesn't work. What I'm saying is we got to get a lot smarter and we need to prioritize, like Mo said, we need to prioritize America first. We need the politicians with the courage to get up there and really say, hey, this is what America really needs right now. And this is the budget that we have to do it. And, we got to quit running these $1 trillion deficits first and foremost. But then once we figure out what needs to be done, what needs to be prioritized here in the United States, after we get rid of all the waste, fraud, and abuse that's definitely taking place, take that and figure out how much, like just run a normal budget like the average American family. Like, all right, we got $4 trillion in tax revenue or whatever it is coming in this year. Guess what? just to get done what's here in the United States is going to be $3.8 trillion. Guess what? We got $0.2 trillion left to give to, foreign aid. And if that's what we have left, that's what we have left. We don't go into another $1 trillion worth of deficits and debt to make sure that every other country in the world is taken care of. And I don't care if it's Israel or anybody else. Like we got to stop doing this. This is insanity. This is how our empire, we're not an empire, right? Technically. All right. But this is how our country is going to fall for sure. And I don't know how much longer we can sustain this. I think, this is one of those things that is going to, China is outpacing us in 1,000 different ways, except for population. They have a real population collapse problem going on over there. But the rest of the world are getting a lot more done with less. Yeah, a lot of them can't compete with us. But what I'm saying is their effective bang for the buck is much better than ours in lots of different ways. And I think we need to figure out how to get much more efficient, smarter, and by God, we're America. We are the greatest country on the planet. We have been, and we still are, but we're going off the deep end real quick. That is not going to last if we stay on the trajectory that we're on. Yeah, I don't know. Mosky says, can you explain how Cash had the authorities to deny the DNI probe from Joe Kent? My question would be, how does the DNI have the authority to probe the FBI? I'm not saying that shouldn't happen. I don't know what the answer to that is. I'm just speculating. But I mean, I don't know without some sort of court order or some real, a different authority, I would think would have to grant, like if the FBI wanted to probe the DNI, like that would probably be an issue without some sort of court order, a warrant or something like that. I don't know the answers to that. I think you should be open to it. I do. Part of that could possibly be explained by maybe Cash is up to something or not. But also, if I was the FBI and there's some nonsense going around, a lot of misinformation, and I knew that I was doing everything, let's just say that I knew that I was doing everything that I was supposed to be doing, and suddenly another head of another agency is like, oh, well, we need to come in and freaking, we need to come in and check to make sure that you're doing something correctly. Like, no, get out of my business, dude. Go. You have a lot of things that you need to worry about. Gary's going to take care of what Gary takes care of. You take care of what you take care of. So I understand the attitude in that. And trust me, I've seen that in the military, and I've seen that in different organizations where people want to come in and try to audit you when they don't really have the authority. And, you people that are in charge of that organization are going to feel like you're stepping on their toes and questioning their competence. And trust me, I have a lot of criticisms for Cash. I think he's not doing the greatest job. I don't know why. I don't know if there's a good reasons behind it. If he's being blocked, I don't know. There's a lot of information that I think, if we're honest with each other and with ourselves, that the fact is we don't know what all the politics are behind some of those things. 2,000 Mules was debunked. Look it up. Not saying that there's a perfect system or not. I disagree. It was treason. I disagree. It was treason. You didn't see thousands of Dems ransacking Congress because that wasn't peaceful protest, period. Well, I would also ask you, Jeff, because what we did see is we saw Democrats occupying multiple state capitals. Are they trying to overthrow the state capitol when they did that? I doubt you thought that those people should be investigated and thrown in jail when they occupied state capitals. We also saw the George Floyd. There was definitely some crazy things going on in DC. St. John's Church was set on fire. I don't know that anyone was really arrested or prosecuted during that whole thing. People were trying to jump over the fence of the White House. To me, the justification for the George Floyd riots, while trying to completely mischaracterize what actually it was not an insurrection. it was not treason unless you consider protesting treason and insurrection. I think that's incorrect, and I think it's dishonest. I mean, I do, and I'm not, maybe that's genuinely how you see it, but I mean, just objectively speaking, like the George Floyd riots, people died, all kinds of crazy things happened when lots of different large scale protests of Democrats have taken over multiple state capitals. And I didn't hear not a single Democrat come out and speak it up and saying, oh, they're trying to overthrow the state government. Never heard that before. And they trashed a lot of stuff. They did everything and much worse than what we saw in Washington in the Capitol. They just did it at the state level. So, like, I've never heard anybody complain about that. In my opinion, the biggest hole in the story is parents recognize the rifle from media pictures, but that picture was a stock photo of a generic rifle. Maybe the World War II rifle looks more generic than we think. Anthony, as far as we know, that is another false nonsense narrative. I believe that photo that was released is the photo of the actual rifle found. There has been not a single credible source that has contested that. There's been a bunch of yahoos on the internet saying that was a stock photo. I disagree with that. I think that is the picture of the photo. I have someone that kind of verify that, I don't want to pull one of these Candace things, but kind of verify that. But regardless of that, even if that didn't take place, I believe that is the actual photo of the actual rifle. And unless you can find, other than someone stating it, that is a stock photo, I think that it's a stock photo narrative is bullshit. It is. I don't know what else to say. Let me see. I get that, but allegedly it was because of potential foreign influences in the Charlie Kirk thing. I mean, that's speculation. And I haven't seen really any evidence other than it's circumstantial evidence and kind of weak circumstantial evidence that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But yeah. All right. I'm just going to zip down here to the live comments. The preferential voting system also amounts to electoral fraud here in Australia, and the globalist left government is trying to stamp out our patriotism. I agree. All you have to do is reverse image search to see if that photo is real or not. I admit that I haven't done that. Let me see. Let's look this up. Is it true? Of Tyler I'm not seeing anything definitive on this. Let me, you know what? I'll try ChatGPT. Let's see what ChatGPT has to say about it. All right, so ChatGPT says I couldn't find, and here I'll throw it up on the screen just so that you you guys can see what I typed, and you guys can, if I put it in a wrong prompt or something like that, you can hit me on that. All right. So what I asked ChatGPT was the picture of the rifle shown to be Tyler Robinson's a stock photo? The answer was, I couldn't find credible evidence that the photo of the rifle said to belong to Tyler Robinson is definitely a stock photo. All public reporting refers to the weapon as a specific family heirloom bolt action rifle allegedly used in the shooting. If you can I can trace the origin of the image. If you saw, upload link to it, and check where it appears in stock photo archives. That is something I will look into. I know I have that photo. It'd probably take me a few minutes to look for. J-Dub, if you're listening right now, and if you can look that up, I would appreciate that. So he can check that out, and we will try. All right, this is J-Dub. Nope, this isn't him. Cogsec check. Rifle photo was leaked from the ATF source. So there you go. That's what Cogsec check is saying. Yeah, I don't trust that guy as far as I can throw him, I'll tell you. We'll just leave it at that on that guy. This burns my ass. What did conservatives do after Charlie Kirk public assassination? They had peaceful prayer vigils. There wasn't riots and burning in the cities. This is also a great point for sure. Look, I think that it's very, for just being honest and objective, it's very clear that the left has pushed violent rhetoric and violence time and time again. Like, they have responded with violence in almost every situation. The only time that you can really say that the right has responded in violence would be January 6th. All right. And I would say some of that was an op. I think some of those people were, I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to really litigate at that. That rifle is not a Mauser 98. They said it was a Mauser 98, didn't they? Well, the rifle in the picture is a Mauser action for sure. I keep hearing people say something differently. I got one right over there. That action is a Mauser action. Now, what exact model is harder to say because they have removed the original stock and it's been replaced with a more modern stock. That is very common to do with heirloom World War I, World War II, just older rifles in general. We do it at our shop all the time. There's nothing crazy about it. There's no conspiracy there. That's what people do with older rifles. The first thing that starts going to crap are old wooden stocks, and they replace them. And it's good to replace because, first of all, people were shorter back then. So a lot of the times, these older stocks have older stocks have this really short length of pull that aren't going to fit 98% of the population unless you're a little kid anymore. And on top of that, most of it is wood. So it's being cracked, it's rotting. There's all kinds of issues unless it's been carefully preserved. And 99% of all rifles in the United States are not carefully preserved. They're just not. G Circle says, who said it was a stock photo of the gun in the first place? Well, a lot of people that want to create a counter narrative without any basis. It's all over Twitter, I don't know, a lot of other social media places. Henry Morgan, Candace is doing exactly what Charlie was doing for the kids, making us think for ourselves. That is an interesting twist on what is being said. I think some of the things that Candace has insinuated, some of the things that she's made accusations without making accusations. She's definitely said that, people within TPUSA are complicit. Whatever you think about what Candace is doing, what I can say for sure is she's definitely leveling accusations without the proof to do it. And I think that is unethical. I have always really liked Candace. I would love to have a personal conversation with her and ask her some questions on this. Whether we did it live, I would just do it on the phone, because I think she is a powerful voice. She was #1 podcaster, but prior to all this, I just had a lot of respect, and I think she was just such a significant voice. And it almost feels to me like it's almost a complete personality change. The way that she speaks, the way that she does things now is completely different than her tone, the cadence of her words was very different prior to all of this. And I want to try to stay as factual as I can on this, but a lot of this is just Gary talking, right? And this is opinion. And I want to make that clear. But the fact is, she has leveled some serious accusations directly or indirectly at people surrounding Charlie that I would not do personally, because I think it's wrong to do with the level of evidence that she has or can present. So I don't know. I'll leave it at that. Summertime says, I really appreciate how moderate and thoughtful you are, Gary. Thank you. I try to be. You can't compare George Floyd, January 6th, not the same. I agree. Probably not in the way that you're thinking. I think they're worlds apart. I think people died, cities burned. I mean, I know one, was mostly peaceful. The other one was the takeover of the U.S. government without nobody had firearms. It wasn't, look, you're right, Jeffrey. They're worlds apart. One was utter chaos, was burning of cities, was killing people left and right, was vicious attacks on law enforcement. And the other one, the only person that died was Ashley Babbitt, who I think, if there was a time for the right to protest and be in the streets, that was a wrongful death. I think the justification for shooting Ashley Babbitt, anybody that says it's justified, I think is complete insanity. She was completely unarmed. It's nuts to me. I don't even know how people can, Jeff, I don't even know how you can say this, man. I really don't. I don't know how you can compare the two and say that January 6th was on every metric. If we just go through the number of deaths, the amount of structures burned, the amount of injuries, you're right. There's no comparison to January 6th versus the George Floyd riots. Denise says, will your map have both U.S. and metric measurements? Yes. So you'll be able to toggle on metric versus American or imperial. Lisa, I don't know how many times I have to say this. If you think about a gun and the engine is the barrel in the action, you can take it and you compare that to a car. I can take the engine of a car out of just about any car and put it into another car, right? Even I can take the engine of a Model T, I can make some conversions and I can put it into a modern car. It'll run like shit, but you can do that. The same thing is with a firearm. You can take the wooden stock off the gun and you can put it onto, it's crazy to me that people are saying this and then saying it with such confidence, and it's so simple. I don't know. I don't know why this is a thing. This is even an argument. That's fair. Are World War II rifles that generic? No, we're using the same technology. I don't know when the Remington action was. Let me see with the Remington 700 action. Remington 700 action. And I'm going to go get an action for you guys in just a second. First made, I would say in the 50s. 1962. All right. You guys stand by for just a second. All right. So the Remington 700 action was made in 1962. So what? We're talking 60 something years ago, right? So if we go back to here. All right. So this Defiance action is also an action, is a Remington action. This is a Remington action. All right. I know you guys can't see it because, all right. This is a Remington action. Made 1962. This is the most predominant action in almost all bolt action rifles. A Mauser action. I don't know. Let's look up when the Mauser action was made. Mauser action first made. And if I was allowed to handle firearms, I'd go over there and get the Mauser. All right. So the Mauser action was first made in 1871. You can take a Mauser action, put a bolt on it. I mean, a bolt. You can put a barrel on it. You can still find new chassis or stocks. You can take that Mauser action that was first designed in 1871. You can put it in a brand new plastic stock. Okay, that doesn't make it a new rifle. Okay, the rifle is actually the action. This piece right here is considered the firearm itself, right? So again, like I don't know why this is so hard. I keep seeing these people in the comments. The first time the rifle was ever posted online was 9/11/25. That's according to Tinny Reverse Image. It's the picture of the rifle that was found. What do you think about Tyler's trial being private? As far as I know, there hasn't been a determination on that. And I think that if it is private, we have a real problem. It is not a stock photo. It is not a stock photo. It is not a stock photo. DCD 416. If it were a stock photo, New York Post would have retracted their article, at the very least updated it. You can buy a polymer stock. Absolutely. Google search what a Mauser 98. It doesn't matter what a Mauser 98 stock looks like. It doesn't matter because a Mauser 98 looks like, because I can take a Mauser 98 and I can modify it, put a new stock and all those other things on it, and it will completely look like a modern rifle, but it's the same exact Mauser 98. It's just put a new stock on it. It's a photo from 4 years ago. That is also incorrect. I know that for a fact, that it is not a photo from 4 years ago. Folks, I don't know where you guys get their information, but they're the wrong places. And that's exactly why we need Dangerous Liberty to bring in news and information, and we can hash these out in real time, just like we are now. Why was Israel Google searching Tyler Robinson's attorney? I don't think they were. I think the Google search stuff is complete nonsense. I've covered it. I mean, we can go through it again tonight if we want, but I think it's dumb. It's not. You can't replicate those searches. Gravity bounce, try to replicate that exact search. You can't do it. I have days and days and days of screenshots searching the exact same thing on Google Trends, the exact same parameters, and I have all different results, all completely contradictory results from completely different dates and everything else. That is not historical data. We've talked about this in this podcast. I've showed you the ChatGPT results. Talk about that and specify that. It's nonsense. It's common to sporterize surplus military weapons, synthetic stock, cut down barrels, chambers for new calibers, etc., and to actually completely change out the barrel as well, which that is also, that's been released in the it's been released in the public too. That I don't know what it was originally, because you can get Mauser in different calibers, but apparently that 30-06 barrel that was put on that Mauser action was a barrel that was changed at some point in history. I don't know when. I've heard that, just not sure. Anyway, it's your show. Sorry to interrupt. Hope your listeners okay. Hope your listeners okay. They're fine, and you're not interrupting. That's why I want to have these lives, so that if you disagree with me, we can correct the record. Maybe as I do one of these searches live, and we're trying to get to the bottom of stuff, we can. If I'm putting out bad information, I want it corrected. Period. All right. If you believe wrong information, I want to help you correct that. It only works if you want to have the truth. But if you want to believe something for the sake of believing it, which is a real problem that we're having with most people these days, like no matter what evidence you show them, you can't change their minds. And for those people, I can't help you. I don't know what to say. I think Tucker Carlson is a really good guest as an example of someone who has gone from very pro-Israel to what the hell are we doing as a nation? Doing? What the hell are we as a nation doing? Yeah, sure. Look, again, here's what I know. There's guys like Tucker. There's a lot of intelligent people. Ian Carroll, a lot of other folks that probably know more than I do about Israel. So that's why they've come to the belief they have with Israel and everything else that goes with it. I would like to listen objectively to what they have to present and understand why that they believe what they do. And then I can make my own assessment if I am jumping on their bandwagon or I believe something else. I would also like to hear, again, the opposite side of that argument for the best case of why we need to invest in Israel and make sure that I'm not making a mistake on that side. Maybe I know there's a lot of information on that side of the house too, that if we all were presented, maybe we'd be more pro-Israel. Or maybe if we heard this side of the house and we put it all together, we'd come up with the idea that, hey, we shouldn't support Israel at all, that they're evil, that they're causing us more problems than we realize. I don't think, without having listened to either one of those arguments, I think where I would come out on, no matter what that was said on either side of that, is that we still have bigger problems here in America than Israel. And I feel like Israel is a distraction from our own issues. That's kind of how I feel right now. And look, regardless of what you feel about Israel, you also have to admit that Israel has a lot of enemies, and that there are definitely going to be enemies of Israel, political and foreign intelligence enemies, that are going to be flooding this sphere with misinformation as well. And don't get me wrong, I don't doubt that Israel is doing the same thing. I used to tell people this all the time. I've always known that Israel has spied on us, that we spy on them, and we're frenemies, just like we are with every other country out there. We all spy on each other. We all do nefarious things against one another while we're sitting around pretending to be friends as well. So kind of goes round and around. We got a couple more super chats. We got that one. We got that one. We got that one. George Floyd was the tipping point of thousands of police brutality across this country. I don't condone the violence, but isn't the same as January 6th, different motive. Okay. Again, I think I'm not going to come out hard on either side of this, because there's some nuance here. I agree that there needs to be some reforms with how we police. generally speaking. I do believe that the brutality, like especially going back into, I don't know, especially pre-2000s or even into the 2000s, like the further you go back in U.S. history, the more brutal, the more tyrannical, generally speaking, our police forces have been against its own people. If you look at the data, look, I also think that we have a real culture problem here in the United States. I think we have an issue to where, unfortunately, we have these police that are trying to police these extremely bad neighborhoods that are filled with all sort of violent people, drug dealers, and they're typically minority communities. I think that those police are definitely going to be on edge. They're going into combat every single day. I don't think that justifies if they're breaking the law or they're violating people's constitutional rights. I'm not saying that. So I think there needs to be some reform in those regards. That being said, like, I'll tell you, like, I don't know. I am thankful for the police that are out there, because it's a thankless job. You are putting your life on the line every single day that you go out there, especially if you are working in inner city in areas of high violent crimes, period. You're lucky to come home every night. You're making, $40,000, $50,000 a year. You're barely getting by. And then you still put on that badge, and that gun every single day, and you go out and do what you're supposed to do. I am even much more thankful for the cops that are going out there every single day and that are remembering their oath to the Constitution, and they're not violating that, and they're not letting the job get to them. Police are extremely undertrained. They're extremely under-resourced, all of those things. So, there's multiple problems here that lead to something like the George Floyd riots. I also think that there's a certain segment, primarily Democrats, that are going to use situations like George Floyd as a political hammer and in ways to justify political violence and all the things and create chaos and everything else that's going on. So this is a complicated issue, and to say things are just black and white and that George Floyd riots were worse than January 6th, I think we're living on two different planets, for sure. Let me see. All right, so here is the very first time. J-Dub just hooked us up. This is the very first time that this picture was posted on the internet. Let me get rid of this comment, and then I will share the screen here. All right, so this was the very first time that this was posted. Let me go over to the right. Boom. All right. So this was September 11th, 2025. We don't need this ad. And this is the first time that this picture was posted. So this is not a stock photo. This is a photo of the gun that was found that is allegedly Tyler Robinson's. So, I don't know what else to tell you. If you do an image search, you figured it out. Again, J-Dub, my producer, found that for us, did the image search. You can believe that or not, whatever you want to do with it, but that is the truth. And if for some reason it's not, find me that information, send it to me, email me, and don't just email me some random freaking YouTuber or somebody on social media saying otherwise, because that isn't going to cut it. All right. You got to have some evidence that goes with that. Backs this stuff up. That's what we're going to do here. Let's see what we got here. You see Baron Coleman claiming Rob McCoy is responsible for Charlie Kirk's death. Folks, I think that there's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to end up getting sued for libel and defamation when this is all said and done. if it's a stock photo, you can do a reverse photo search. It will show up in the search results. If it doesn't, it's an original. It's an original. We just did that. Gary, I was not implying it was stock. Wanted you to put it to rest. Thanks, Gary, for what you do. No problem, man. I apologize if I assumed that incorrectly. Greg, aka Gary, did you see that the January 6th pipe bomb suspect was identified as a Capitol Police Officer, Charlie Kirk? We did. People are trying to make up conspiracies when there is one right under their nose. I think that's one of the conspiracies right under our nose. I think January 6th is a conspiracy right under our nose. I think COVID-19, the vaccinations is a conspiracy right underneath their nose. There's so many of them out there that are just all the evidence is there and nobody even seems to really care. But this is I think it's very clear to me that this is a false flag that was most likely orchestrated by the Biden administration to push a narrative that Republicans were, terrorists, that white nationalism was the greatest threat to this national security. Yeah, so that's what I think. So apparently, well, we'll talk about the scope. What you drinking, Gary? It's not going to be cool. All right, it's decaffeinated green tea with some mint tea in there. Look, this is a question that comes up. Bronson's responding to somebody most likely talking about the fact that the scope on this is kind of wonky, right? It's pretty far back. It is. That being said, it could have been, and it actually is moved in the right direction. Let me actually big screen this. I don't like that. All right. So the way that this optic is set up on this rifle is not optimal, to say the least. It could have actually slid in the rings. The optics will slide in the rings. He could have done that from when he jumped off the roof. But to me, that doesn't mean anything. Look, I've had clients show up to our long-range courses with optics and rifles set up goofier than this. And I asked them, hey, man, have you been, and that's one of the first things that we do is we go over proper rifle setup and making sure it's adjusted to you, the optic setup, making sure it's level, all the things. And I've seen clients that have been shooting for years with goofier setups than that. And I'm like, have you been shooting this thing? Like, I don't know how you're not getting scope bit. And they have been. All right. So while that can definitely be explained from the fall and the buttstock hitting and then, the momentum of that, causing the optic to slide back in the rings, that's a possibility. But it could be that it was just set up like that to begin with. I've seen that. It doesn't really surprise me that much. How do I always miss these lives? Make sure you hit that bell notification. You like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, and make sure you guys select all. All right. Look, if there is any particular, I don't know, theories, whether you support them, alternative theories, right? Whether you support them or not, that you would like us to address one night, leave those down in the comments. I'll make sure J-Dub actually gets that, and we will put the show together to address those theories all together. Like, there's so many new ones coming out that it's honestly hard to keep up with. So anyways, if there's something you guys would like us to address, throw that up there, and we can go through those one night. At Slate, no, you just don't understand ballistics. MLK 30-06 didn't exit, and spine shots and deer don't either. It is unlikely that a 30-06 wouldn't exit Charlie Kirk's neck. With that being said, it is not impossible. And we don't know. And the problem is that everybody's experience with 30-06 is deer hunting rounds. Like, I think what we're dealing with is not a deer hunting round. I think it was either a low recoil round that they used for plinking and shooting. I think that they or at least not the typical deer hunting round. It probably had some sort of frangible tip on there, projectile. There's the ammunition could be defective. Like, there is 1,000 plausible and reasonable explanations as to why a 30-06 round wouldn't exit Charlie's neck. So anyone saying that they know that it wouldn't, I'm just sorry, but you're ignorant. I mean, you don't know the projectile. You don't know what type of ammo was used. You don't know if it was hand loaded or it was store bought. You don't know the weight of the projectile, whether it was 150, 120, 100 grain, 90 grain. We don't know the muzzle velocity of that round when it left the barrel. We don't know if there was any defects that would cause the round to not be stabilized and or yaw to the point to where it's keyholing, which could explain the larger entrance wound. I do think that's unlikely. Typically, when you have a round that's unstabilized, it usually is not going to follow a predictable flight path and will usually veer off that flight path very quickly. That being said, I have seen it done. I've seen 100-yard targets where, it's keyhole. It's just, there are some plausible explanations with that. But here's the thing. You can take all of that. And if you just analyze what evidence they have, you throw that piece away, all of the other evidence points to, like, there has to be an explanation for that, because I mean, there's DNA of his on the rifle. There's DNA of his on the trigger. There's DNA of his on the spent cartridge. There's DNA of his on the towel. They're going to find the clothes that he had going. They're going to have the clothes. There's going to be videos, much clearer videos. There was thousands of cameras out there on UVU. I think there's over like 2,000 cameras, 1,900, something like that at UVU. They didn't show us everything, folks. They have to preserve that evidence to present to an untainted jury so that they can see that evidence for the first time. And I understand that people don't like that, but that's not how the justice system works. You don't get to see the FBI's job is not to convince you, the average American, that this is what happens, to some extent, at least prior to trial. During trial, it's their job to convince you, the American, but it's also their job, most importantly, to convince the jury that this person is indeed guilty. It's the job of the defense attorneys to take untainted evidence and untainted jury and convince that jury that the evidence that the state is presenting is nonsense. So that's what we're going to see play out. And you're going to be able to see both sides of that, hopefully. If they don't televise that trial, like, there's some real problems that we're going to have in the United States. Do what Joe Morton says. Go smash that like button. Again, we just pulled it up the very first time. It's the actual rifle. It is a photo that was leaked from the ATF of the rifle that was collected there. The first time that photo was ever seen was indeed right there and I'm having to switch back and forth between mouses because they both keep crapping out on me. I don't know why. I addressed the scope issue. Dave S. Pittsburgh says you know proof of that. I don't know which one you're talking about. Clarify that. Give me a full sentence or paragraph so that when I don't see your statement in 5 minutes, I know exactly what you're talking about. You're doing great. Some people are learning to think reasonably. They're being misguided by influx of social media disinformation. Thank you for doing it so civilly. Well, thank you for watching, Linda. I appreciate it. Yeah, look, I mean, there's plenty of evidence. There's plenty of not only evidence, but we've seen it documented time and time again where we do, like, Martin Luther King was indeed shot with 30-06. There was no exit wound. All right. So there could be some circumstances, very plausible circumstances where 30-06 doesn't exit. I think it's atypical. It is atypical. All right. That is not the norm. but he could be using atypical ammunition. And if we have atypical ammunition, we're going to get atypical results. Simple as that. Appalachian ballistics. Do you think this Charlie Kirk shooting was direct shot to the neck and plate still makes sense? I stated this early on. I have really good evidence that he was not wearing ballistic protection. All right. I believe I was wrong on my initial assessment of that. I agree with you that it makes the most sense. It's definitely still more plausible, a more plausible argument than some of these other things that are being said. So anyways, I believe wholeheartedly at this point that he was not wearing ballistic protection. Thoughts on Byron? I don't know what that is. Where is a 3D model? 3D model is going to be, we're going to show that tomorrow. And we're going to be releasing the 3D model for everybody. I've already actually sent it out to several content creators. Part of that is so they can see it. Part of that is to make sure that it is accurate, make sure just getting some additional eyes on it and see if there's anything that they see wrong with it. CJ Correnti, who will be on tomorrow, I will have a link prior to the show that will allow everybody that wants to download the 3D model. And then during the show tomorrow, our plan is to go through and give a tutorial of the software that you're going to have to download and use on it. There's other options as well, but the one that we recommend that shows everything the clearest, that seems to work and navigate through it the best, is Rhinoceros 8. And we're going to show you how to make sure that your settings are correct, because it's not easy. I went through an hour-long tutorial yesterday. I was back there navigating and I forgot half of it. But anyways, we're going to go through that. We'll make sure that your settings are correct, make sure that you can go through and he put in some really cool features in this as well. Some different viewpoints to and from different theories. Like we show you exactly from this spot that a lot of people are saying a shooter was in, and you'll be able to see their viewpoint, the point of view from that spot exactly, and then you'll be able to do all kinds of stuff with it. So I think it will help cut down on some of the misinformation and at least leave us with plausible alternatives, right? Yeah, there was no shooter at his 4 o'clock. I can just tell you that for sure, for 1,000 different reasons. "13 theories from yesterday." Could the shot have been fired from 700 plus yards from an outside place? No. Nope. And you can see this from Google Earth. You don't need a 3D model to see that. The problem that you have with that theory, as a matter of fact, let me just pull something up for you real quick, and I'll just give you a quick demonstration on this. This is not the model. This is a different software that we have. We don't have the model in it. We have the scan in it, just so that we understand the difference here. But I'll pull this up and I'll show you why. And the problems that we have with such an idea, and many of the ideas with this that don't take into account some of the facts that we're going to go over real quick. So let me share this tab instead here. Let me click back here and add this to stage, and I'll just make this big. So let's talk about why we're not going to have a line of sight from far away. And that is because Charlie Kirk was in a defilade. All right. We have a depressed area back here, and even it doesn't show it. So we actually did a flyover. There isn't any, basically what it comes down to is there's no structures tall enough to give a line of sight to that lower area right there. I mean, even when we get in here, and what I've talked about, because I have kind of played some devil's advocate on some of these things, is if we look, one of the only other line of sights that's further away is a clear line of sight is approximately if we had a shooter at this position right here. This is the only other line of sight that we have. The other real problem that I have, and this was the line of sight from the alleged shooter right here. The model that we have is going to have the tent, going to have Charlie, going to have the railings up. It's going to be much more visually accurate and going to replicate exactly what we saw during the Charlie Kirk event. So we're going to be able to see a clear line of sight of some of the stuff going on there. So anyways, like there's just no other line of sight that's available further away. So there's that. Let me see real quick. I'll just pull up. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to share this with you guys real quick. See if I can navigate through this thing halfway without looking too stupid. Let me present. I will share a screen. Let me see. We're going to stop that screen. I'm going to share a different screen here. And I will share the model that we have. We'll just share the entire screen. All right. So I'm going to share this entire screen, and then I'm going to pull up the model, and I'll just show you a really cool couple of cool features that you guys will have access to that we've built into this. And by tomorrow, there's even going to be some more. So one of the things that that CJ built in that are being refined right now, by the way, is so this is the lossy building perspective. You're going to be able to jump in right here. You're going to be able to see the point of view from the shooter. All right, and then you'll be able to zoom way in all the way to Charlie. You'll be able to see things from his perspective as well. And we're also going to have cameras, virtual cameras that are pointing from the perspective of, and I just want to make sure, yeah, all right, so it is indeed showing. The virtual perspective of Charlie, the security team, things like that. Now we have the Sorensen building. All right, so this is from the perspective of in between the trees. Clearly, there's a line of sight. There's some other issues with this that I've talked about in the past. But you're going to be able to click on these things and look at them. This is from the campus. Now, you need to understand what this is. So right now, we have a proposed shooter right here. This is what some people are saying. What's his name? Range Day guy or whatever it is. I forget. I can't think of his name right now. But anyways, so there is no line of sight from this guy. To get a line of sight on Charlie from anywhere in this position, this person would have to be all the way up here on this ledge, and we can see what that line of sight looks like. Another thing that I want you guys to notice that CJ and his team were able to find out that I didn't notice at first, and he's going to go through some of these details that they found and made sure were included into the model itself, is that the front legs of the tent were actually raised up. And so the tent itself was not like straight. The front was higher than the back. So that was an interesting finding that I didn't notice, and he showed me some pictures as proof of that. So you're going to be able to do all this stuff, folks. And there you can see from Range Day Bro. That's what it was. Then we also, this is not a perfected one, but this is a viewpoint from the SUV. I know people are saying that there's some things going on with the SUV, but a lot of different capabilities and other options. And chances are we're going to continue to update this. We'll release new versions of this as we find more details. As we add some of these different scenarios to this, we will continue to push updates out for you guys. But again, like there's so many options on these things and their settings and things like that that you need correct. Another cool thing about this, let me go to another one of these. I'll go here real quick. So we can go up here to this little color wheel, and right here, the lens length. All right. So we can actually change this to like a 30 millimeter lens view, right? So now it's going to push out and give us a little bit wider of a view. We can go 10 millimeter focal length, and there you go. We're going to see so you got a lot of different capabilities with this, but it's easy to toggle things on and off and kind of screw up the capabilities of this. So I want to make sure that when we release it, we make sure people know how to use this stuff. So we're going to go through a quick tutorial tomorrow. I will make this available, providing that CJ is done making the improvements that he and I discussed and adding some of the things that we discussed. I'll probably release this a couple hours prior to the show tomorrow so that you guys can actually pull this stuff up, have it all set up, and then we will go through the different options in real time. And then, you can make sure that you know how to use this properly. So there's that. Hopefully that makes sense. A lot of time and energies went into that. Yeah. We're going to be Gray Hughes was actually pulled up. I sent this model to Gray yesterday. He, myself, who else did we have? Well, it was he and I was trying to get a couple other people on. I've sent this to Chris Martinson, and I have sent this to Stephen Gardner. But I'm going to make sure it's available publicly. But point was, as we were going through this, Gray being the technical, I called him a nerd yesterday, and he is a nerd, but he's super smart and technical with some of this stuff. He came up with some different options where we can put kind of better representations of people and analog and other things in there. So he's already contributed greatly to the model, and I'm sure we'll continue to see that. Yeah, I think technically I said he was a dork. I was like, you freaking nerd. How do you know all this stuff? He probably stayed in town because he thought he was in the clear. If he was worried about not getting identified, he would dress with face cover and change the clothes, but he didn't. He wanted to blend in. You start putting face covers and stuff on, then you don't blend in. I'm not sure that he knew what to do on the exit. I don't think he was planning on getting out of there alive, to be honest with you. I think the operation itself was fairly well planned. I think the exit was kind of improvising as he went on. Oh, here we go. CJ is in the chat. CJ's in the Paramount Tactical Model will be on the server for download around 5 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. CJ Carenti. Folks, I've said it before. I can't say it enough. Yeah, I took the time to go down there. I hired a friend of mine to do a drone survey. That's what he did. I did a lot of work on that. That's great. CJ Carenti has spent 10 times as much time, money, effort, and everything else contributing to this effort. So CJ, we can't thank you enough. And yeah, man, you're a freaking national treasure. I just said that the model's not all right. M says, so the model is done, but you aren't releasing it publicly. It's a file. It doesn't need to be online embedded. I don't know what you mean. I'm going to put it on a server, just like CJ said, that you can download and you'll be able to get it. It's actually a pretty large file. Like, what is these weird accusations? It's not done. All right. He's still making some final tweaks to it. So just calm your horse. You know what? Just for that, I'm not giving it to you. We're gonna put some special software on there that you can't download it just because you're being a jerkhead. Gray is really good with video stuff. I've picked his brain a few times about a setup that's a little bit more, so I can be as high speed as him. It's much easier to convince a person of a lie than it's convince them that they've been lied to. The Democrats take advantage of this. I think a lot of people, not just Democrats, I think foreign adversaries, political on left and right, look, they're good at we're all the people that are all pushing different interests. Some are more nefarious than others. They're good at lying. They're good at trying to undermine their opponents. Everybody does it. Frangible ammo doesn't work. Less than 90 grain ammo doesn't work. No other old ammo works. Only thing that works is a supersonic bullet, and no exit says it wasn't 30-06 from 140 yards away. Slate, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you are not a ballistician, because I'm just telling you everything that you said there is incorrect. Like, I don't know where you get your ballistic information from, but it's wrong. Just wrong. All right. I could load supersonic ammo right over there, and without a doubt, and I could load ammo and replicate those results pretty easily with frangible ammo and a couple other things. Like, not even a problem. I don't think that it was loaded ammunition. It could end up being loaded ammunition. I think we have some sort of again, there's a ton of different options. All right. 180 grain bullet isn't the only option. And here's the problem that I have so far. All the testing that I've seen, like if you're going to go into ballistic testing and you're going to prove that it should have exited, all right, what you're going to do is you're going to get standard hunting ammunition, 150 grain up to 220 grain. And by the way, the further you go up in weight, the more likely it is to exit. So I don't know why we haven't seen lighter grain ammunition tested. All right. Lighter bullets dump velocity and they dump energy much faster. If you want to carry more velocity, you're going to go with a heavier bullet, more velocity, more energy, all of those things. Right. So, like, I don't think anyone's done any fair ballistic testing on this at all. All right. And we're going to try. And we're going to try to do it as scientifically. We're going to document it. We're going to show you the results. We're going to go through lots of different options. To get atypical results, you got to go with some atypical ammo selection. And that's what we got to do, because those are real possibilities. You can't just pretend the other half of the ammo selection that's readily available to 30-06 isn't an option. And like, oh, well, every time I've went hunting, I've always seen my 180 grain bullet go through a deer's neck. So I know everything there is to know about 30-06. You've used one type of ammo your entire hunting career, and now you're a ballistician. And then you go and you take that 180 grain round that you use for hunting and you go shoot a pork neck or whatever else. And like, surprise, surprise, you get the same exact results that you did when you were hunting, and it blew through 3 deer. Like, okay, well, you got to go with a different option. All right. And there's plenty of other options out there. It's just the right way to go about testing data. This is a great question. Like, generally speaking, most people believe that Tyler was in Orem. If he wasn't there to shoot Charlie, then why was he there? I mean, there's a lot of ammo that's inconsistent. Again, we don't know how that ammo was stored. We don't know the ammo we literally know nothing about the ammunition the only thing that we sort of, or that has been documented, right? We don't know. I mean, I do believe the charging documents. I think that is a factual piece of evidence that if it was incorrect it's going to be easily disproven in court. Like, they're not going to put something they can't prove in there. So anyways, a lot of ammunition is inconsistent. We don't know the condition of the barrel and the rifle and the rifling and the lands and grooves and a lot of other things. Like, there's so many things that we don't know about the ballistic portion of this case, which is giving everybody the major, definitely me. It's what has kept my attention. Like, okay, what's going on here? We got to figure this out. And the fact is if we can show, look, what has been presented is like the top third of the capabilities of a 30-06. They're like, the top third of this proves that a 30-06 round is going to exit a neck. We haven't looked at anything else. As a matter of fact, all the other ballistic options. Now, I could get out there and I could test some of these other commercially available ammunition. And when we're all done with it, I can conclude the same thing. I can say, you know what? After testing, I'm with everybody else. I don't think this is possible. Okay. The fact is, nobody's done that. Nobody's done any testing on like some atypical ammunition out there. And there's plenty of it. It's just not the most common stuff available. There's tumble upon impact rounds, like, which I got over there. All right. That's what they do. They tumble upon impact. And guess what? They don't penetrate very far. Gary, I know there is close to a 0.00 probability you'll do so, but when you get the chance, which may require some warm-up investigation, consider covering NDAA, notably the Smith Month 2013. We will. Matter of fact, my new producer, JW, we've been kind of making a list of some of the things, some different stories. JW, make sure you make a note of that, and we'll look into it and see if it seems like it's worth covering. Not say it's worth covering, but well, yeah, you know, I'm going to say if it's worth covering. I'll be like, oh, this is interesting. We should cover this. He did change clothes. He changed the shorts and T-shirts, and then changed again to jeans when he went to DQ. All right. So he definitely changed multiple times. I mean, I think that is clear indication of deception and is exactly what you'd expect from someone that is trying to commit a crime. Sorry if I'm changing the subject, but if Candace is legit, Maitely trying to investigate Charlie's murder, why has she not looked at the trans furry connection? This is this is a great point, the owl, and it's one of the things that I've brought up indirectly, and I want to make a greater point on this as well. There has been clear resistance and omission of some of the most obvious things that people should be investigating, including the trans connection, social media connection, all of those things. Ultimately, what I believe, it is easier to convince some weirdo on the internet to commit one of these crimes than it is to get 15 different shooters and to get Israel involved. Even if it was Israel, even if Israel, like, it would be easier for them to use social media manipulation and other things that we know are taking place here in the United States and abroad. I think it's easier to set someone in motion than it is for Israel to come up, or any other group that you might think are involved in this, TPUSA or whatever else. I think it's so much easier to fanaticize and radicalize. Fanaticize. I don't know if that's a word. Radicalize. Fanaticize. I have to think about that one. To radicalize someone into doing something like this than it is to create a patsy and to put a real shooter somewhere else, create contradictory trajectory. It does, like, all that other stuff doesn't make sense. So, but the point here is like, there are many people, Candace and many others, that I feel like are intentionally neglecting and ignoring more likely scenarios that they should be investigating and trying to rule out before they move to something else, and they won't hear any of it, right? That's just like, you're pushing a more plausible scenario. You're a Fed. You work for Israel. I'm going back over here to La La Land with, you know, flying drones and some of these other things. I mean, that's just what they're doing. And I'm all about investigating flying drones. I'm all about investigating all this other stuff. I'm all about bringing on people that are completely disagree with me and to hear their theories, but I'm not seeing that take place on a lot of other channels. I'll leave it at that. Well, it was a great change of subject. While it may have no direct relevance to this particular subject, it is apropos to much more particularly information. Apropos. Okay. Everyone knows I'm an Israeli Fed. You're right. I'm using my $100 bills to light my menorah at night. I also like to use my Fed badge as an eye patch. I wear that as a pirate, so I can only see 50% of what's going on out there. Mario Gregorio, question: why the security that people think had a trigger at the sleeve was looking at Kirk just before the shot instead of looking at the crowd. I don't know. I don't know what he was looking at, and neither do you. He was looking in that direction. He could have been looking behind Charlie. He could have been looking at, he had sunglasses on. He could have been looking somebody over to his left in his periphery. I mean, we don't know where he was looking exactly because you can't see his eyeballs. And we don't know, again, he had we have approximately a 50 millimeter field of view. I mean, that's what approximates a human's field of view is a 50 millimeter lens. So anyways, the point being is that like, well, you don't know what he was looking at. And I don't know. And you'd have to ask him. And he may have a very good, plausible reason why he was looking in that direction and why and when he was looking the way that he was. I don't know. I mean, but what I'm not going to do is be like, oh, he was looking at him, so he's in on it. He definitely killed him. And that's where people go. Like, we need to hear, because there's plenty of plausible reasons why a security person would be looking back at that. And again, it could be something going on behind him. Could, again, I just stated many different reasons why he could be looking in that direction. Slate, I'm with you. I look, I've always said that the ballistic protection theory, which I started, I don't think anybody was saying that before I did, was the unifying theory. It doesn't mean I'm right. And I think at this point I was wrong. Matter of fact, I'm 99.99% correct. I 99.9% feel that I was incorrect. CJ Correnti is the main talent of the model and does deserve all the credit. Is amazing. I agree. Best channel covering this, Gary Kellner. Thank you very much. Jim O'Hara. Got my name right this time. That's okay. I don't care if any people call me Greg all the time. When I was in Mexico and I've been in South America for whatever reason, and Latin country, I'll just say it. They can't say Gary. They always say Jerry. I'll be like, my name is Gary. Jerry? Gary. Jerry? Cars can be GPS tracked with or without consent, right? That's kind of true. Your car is being tracked by the car companies in most circumstances 24/7. You did give consent when you sign up for different apps and in your paperwork and you buy the car. Law enforcement can't get access to that information, or are not supposed to be able to. They can, and especially higher end intelligence, they can and they do without a warrant. But fact is his phone was tracked. His car is going to be tracked. They're going to have all that information. Some are getting paid to disrupt, disseminate information. I agree with this. I think there are people that are getting. I don't even know that you have to pay them. I think there are people there are groups in multiple different groups with multiple different motivations and objectives that are inserting information to this, and you don't even have to pay them to do that. You just give them this new, sensational information. They're going to post it. And it doesn't have, they don't have to sanity check it. I mean, a lot of these people are posting stuff. I just called someone out on X the other day. They were like, oh, look at this. We found new pictures of this dark person on this roof dressed in all black. Well, the picture they showed was not someone on the roof. And by the way, it was a trash bin. It took me 30 seconds. Number one, I knew that wasn't the roof because I'm familiar with the area. And this person that's supposedly covering this story ad nauseum should have known that wasn't a rooftop. That was the ground, and it was a trash bin that you can go right on Google Earth today. And that shooter is still sitting right there. All right. It's the trash bin. And this is the kind of nonsense that we're seeing spread about. Yeah. It's not only that the right is being divided, but his organization, his legacy is being undermined by misinformation after his death. His wife is without a shred of evidence. And all it is people saying, oh, she acts weird. I don't like the way she hugged JD Vance. She's clearly guilty of murder. After, there's some sort of behavioral psychologist that can interpret every single body movement and the way that she acts and all this other stuff. Look, one thing I'll tell you, Erica Kirk, talk about atypical. Like she doesn't act like most people. And I noticed this again. I've been following Charlie for years, and I've seen interviews with Charlie and her, and she always whispers. She's always a little dramatic. I don't know. She's a woman that's in the public eye. Maybe she's trying to create, maybe she has a certain public persona. Maybe that's just how she is. I don't know. But it doesn't lead to her being guilty of killing her husband. That is such an illogical, immoral jump to make from this. Like she hugged JD Vance weird. She's guilty of murder. Like, you're an idiot. All right. That's just nonsense. You shouldn't say that stuff. And in America, we used to believe that. Could be 150 grain hunting ammo. Cup and core bullets are very inconsistent. Some mushrooms, some shred their jacket, and disintegrate core on impact. Yeah, like bullets do weird things. And the problem when we're trying to, and this goes back to, when I'm trying to interpret what I thought was an impact on body armor. What we have is an extremely high speed and energetic event that's being filmed on 30 frames per second at best. I think some of these are 24 frames. Maybe a few of them out there on 60 frames per second. But the point is that you're missing 90% of the information of what's taking place in between those frames. You're talking about something that happens so fast and is so energetic and is like, we've seen when you watch those videos that 30 frames per second that's been slowed way down and interpolated by some sort of video software like Adobe Premiere or Final Cut or whatever, right? Like, these are artificially dragging out these frames. We're not getting more information. All you're doing is, there's 30 frames in that second, and all they did was make each picture that make up those 30 frames in a second last longer. It doesn't give you more information. And again, 90% of the information that we would need to see exactly what's taking place, we're missing in between those frames of an event that is happening faster, really, than we can even comprehend. I'm going to try to get this done tomorrow, Stephen. Have you used the mold rounds yet and tried to replicate it? I would love to see that video if you have. I haven't done it yet. Again, I was trying to get it done today. Some things came up. I couldn't. I'm going to try to get it done tomorrow within the next couple of days for sure. If not tomorrow, I should be able to do it tomorrow. But if not tomorrow, I will get some initial ballistic testing done for sure. Look, I'll be honest with you. I've shot old rounds in the past, and those old rounds, and I could be proven wrong on this, but I've shot old rounds that were clearly well taken care of and stored, and they performed as good as, brand new rounds. But I am curious to see what those will do. And, maybe I'll be proven wrong. Yep. Jeff is exactly right. I think it just cavitated, fragmented on impact, where shit happens when bullets hit blood, flesh, and that don't happen on ballistic gelatin. That's another real issue that we're going to have here. Unless we had literal cadavers, it's really tough to replicate. And even cadavers don't have all the blood, which changed the ballistics. We're going to try to get some testing done on the ballistic gel models that we have, but ballistic gel is not a good analog for human flesh for lots of different reasons. My ballistics are pure anecdotal, redneck, indiscriminate destruction of anything within reach, but 30-06 still boggles my melon. Dude with the water bottle in the left back pocket at Charlie's 1 o'clock ran behind the platform. Charlie on ground. He never looks at him, looks at his right, and stuffs something in his front pants. I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about, but I've covered this generally in the past. In these extreme events, people do weird things. They don't know what to do. Like, I don't know. I take that stuff as fairly anecdotal. What about your buddy the sniper? Don't know what you're talking about or who you're talking to. Gray Hughes is saying, and because of that, everything else in the probable cause is conspiracy. I'm not sure what he's referencing. I missed that. Charlie was a bigger guy than people think. You're absolutely right. You know, he was 6'5" around there. He's a big dude. Exactly right on the honey ammo, Gary. Does the model account for the supposed 1 foot gap Range Day Bro says is between the buildings shows on Google Earth? Not sure the angle is there. I actually sent Range Day Bro all of the he asked me for some specific angles, line of sights, and distances, and I sent him all that. And yes, it does account for it's going to count for all the gaps, because again, the way that 3D model scans, the only thing that we're having to model out is all of the setup that TPUSA put in place, and Charlie himself on the chair, and some of the cameras there, some of the railings there. So all of that stuff that wasn't there when we did the 3D model scan. The 3D model scan itself is going to be extremely accurate. It is a huge file. So all of that stuff is going to be in there. And that angle that he was wanting was like 22 degrees. And again, well, look, I'll take it back there. I'll show you exactly what he thinks is taking place. I'll get rid of your comment. Let's go back down here, pull up Rhino 8 one more time. And I'm going to go to the spot that Range Day Bro thinks Sorensen Slope right here. All right, so this is the area. As you guys can see, this is what we have here, and there isn't a line of sight from this spot. You know what? I'm also going to I'll pull up I'm going to pull up what I sent Range Day Bro. I just remembered I had those in files that I can share with you real quick. So let me remove this for a second, and I will share some of the files that I actually shared with Range Day Bro. Let me find those real quick. Should only take me just a second here. This is where I need some elevator music. Throw in a little elevator music. I have this folder. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw these up in a couple of tabs so we can just kind of scroll through those real quick. All right. You know what? I'm just going to share my screen. Well, let me see if I can do multiples. I don't think I can. All right, let me try this another way. So I can do multiples over here, and so bear with me. I will show you everything that I sent to Range Day Bro. This is when I need the multiple screens, like my boy Gray. All right. There's that one. All right, so this is the picture that one of the pictures that I shared with Range Day Bro that he was asking me for. And we'll make this big screen here. All right, so this is what he was asking me for. And then what that red line indicates is that there is no line of sight. There's not a line of trajectory either. So we have no line of departure and we have no line of sight. And this is the gap that he's talking about there. Target is placed, it's 150 foot. It's a 25.5 degree angle. And then you can actually see the exact same problem from multiple other angles. Let me see what we have here. Here we go. This is another picture of that. And I'll share this tab. There again, you can see that there is no angle. That red line indicates that there isn't a line of sight to that location. So I'm sorry, but his theory just doesn't hold water because it just doesn't have a line of sight. There's that. All right, we'll answer a few more questions real quick, and then we'll call it a night. Let me get to the bottom. Make sure I didn't miss any super chats. I always feel bad when someone tells me I missed a super chat. Makes me crazy when I see only the 2 of 2A LOL, but I love your kind, calm demeanor, Gary. I don't typically look for anyone's videos daily, but I do yours. Well, thank you, Coach Kimberly. I appreciate that. It is the Second Amendment. I don't know why the abbreviation chaps you're asked, but hey, we all have our own weird quirks. I have plenty of my own. Opinion on if Tyler acted alone or had help. Right now, I would say that the evidence that I've seen points to that it, in my mind, and this is kind of circumstantial, clearly, that it's impossible that at least Lance Twiggs didn't know about it. I think that is highly, highly unlikely. I think it's also likely that he was talking about this to other people on his group online. Could be much more deeper than that. There could be somebody that has provided material aid. We just don't have we don't have proof of that, right? We don't have any evidence that anyone's provided. I think it's very likely that somebody manipulated him, or a group of people manipulated him into doing this online. I think that's very possible and very likely. We talked about it with BX. Look, I think there are groups out there, and I think the governments of almost all type are very capable of it. I think there's a clear formula that works with identifying people online that they can manipulate into doing atrocities, whether it's mass shootings, school shootings, targeting someone individually. I think those are I think that's a very real thing. And I think it happens more than we think, to be honest with you. Tesla, thank you very much. And Witchy Woman became a member. Thank you. Again, folks, we have memberships. If you want to support what we do, we'd appreciate it if you joined as a member. I am going to start doing more. I'm going to try to do more things that are member specific. Today I put out a member, kind of a members only and or newsletter only video, especially if you're in the gun stuff. Look, what we ultimately do in the real world We train people in firearms. We sell guns. If you're into that sort of thing, look, we'd appreciate. Another way that you can support the channel is you go to, to our website. That helps us out a lot as well. And we're going to treat you right. A couple more real-time comments, and then we will call it a night. Ben told Megyn Kelly he has said for years that he wished Israel would lessen its dependence on the U.S. I've covered this like 50 times. Yes, the night. All right, so tomorrow night, CJ Correnti was just in here. We will have, I'm going to post a link to a Google Drive where people can download or some sort of drive on a server that you can download all the 3D models. At 8 p.m., CJ Correnti and I are going to go through that 3D model, and we're going to show you the software that we recommend that we found to work the best. We're going to give you an entire tutorial of how to use that. We're going to show you the different features that we have embedded into that. He's also going to go through and show you how he came up with the accuracy of heights, distances, depths, all of those things. So stay tuned for tomorrow. I'm sure I will have that live stream up and promoted early in the day, but then we will also post that link to the server so that you guys can download those files, and we will give it to the world, and hopefully, you do great things with it. Linda just became a member. Thank you very much. We appreciate the support there. According to Joseph, he just said foreign aid and was not talking about military and diplomatic support. If the U.S. withdrew military support, Israel would be immediately destroyed. I do think there's some significant truth to that. You are a solid 9.75. Please don't say Gray is your boy. Dude said he broke down gun in his first video. Complete nonsense, and that shows lack of ability. I actually like Gray. I'm sorry, Mr. Huff, if that disappoints you. Look, I'm sure there's things that Gray has gotten wrong. There's going to be things that I get wrong. What I can tell you is that I know for a fact that Gray is a good faith actor. You can criticize. I'm sure there's things to criticize, and there's plenty to criticize me. Like, we're just human beings on the other end of this camera, folks. We do a lot of things wrong. If I just got rid of all the people in my life that I don't agree with, then it'd be a lonely world. Thankfully, a lot of people in my life are gracious enough to put up with my nonsense in many different aspects, specifically my wife. My family loves me in spite of all my flaws, both present and used to be a lot more flawed way back in the day. A lot more intolerable. I mean, I'm still plenty flawed. But the point is like, I like Gray. I've met him personally. We've hung out. I think he's hilarious. I think he's technically astute. He has a very common sense approach to things. You might feel like he's rough around the edges. I hear a lot of people talk about, and me and Gray have had conversations about, he just, sometimes he gets grumpy. We all do, I guess. I don't know. He says he's trying to do better, like be a little more tolerant. Like, I don't know, like whatever, man. I like Gray. Nothing you can say is going to change me. Look, there's going to be lots of people that I like that I completely disagree with. The funny thing is, like, my best friend, Jason, you guys have had him on. He's never been on visibly, but he's sometimes back there on another mic. We agree on nothing, man. Like, all we do is argue, and I look forward to because I win almost every argument. That's always nice. But, all we do is argue. I don't know what to say. I'm going to save that, Gerald, for I'll cover it a little bit. Look, we're going to have Blake Bednar's on. I haven't heard his entire like why he believes what he believes, like little pieces of it. I think I understand, and that's the thing. I'm not even 100% sure I understand what he's saying. Why I think that the microphone, from my standpoint, exploding or shooting a projectile or whatever else doesn't make sense is just a physics issue. I've spent a lot of time using explosives in my military career, lots of experience with it, from door charges to different shape charges to, breaching charges of all different types, both, anyways, a lot of experience with explosives, big charges, small charges, you name it. One of the things that we did, especially with metal doors, is we'd create these breaching charges that was essentially, we have it tamped. We had most of those forces directed in one way. We also use water bags, IV bags, and some other things. So you can get creative with some of these things, and you can direct some of the energy in one direction, but you still are left with the physics, the Newtonian physics of, equal and opposite reaction. So if I have something on here, whether it's an exploding device, if it blows up, even if we have some things that are helping to direct a significant amount of force in one direction, it is still going to burn, explode, propel other things away from it. Like, you can't get away from that. If we're saying, and I've heard this said too, that it's shooting a projectile. So we have this small device. Let me go just so people know what we're talking about here. Yeah, here we go. All right. So allegedly, this is the microphone the wireless mic that Charlie was working. It's a Rode microphone, so it's a very small thing. At least, we can't even say that for sure, because the magnetic clasp thing that he had, that's definitely came from one of these. But I've used that same magnetic clasp on other similar mics as well. So we don't even know for sure it's this. But let's say it is. So first of all, like, there's only so much that you can do with this that's going to create enough force to kill a man. But somehow I don't know how you get around creating that force to kill a person, see the amount of energy displaced in a person that we did with Charlie, and then this not go flying off and shoot through the shirt or whatever else. And that's regardless if it's an explosion or if it is somehow shooting a projectile. Like, to me, that's dipping into science fiction. Now, Blake may have a better explanation of that, and that's why we're going to have him on next week. He can go through his entire theory, and he can explain it to us, and maybe we'll find it super compelling. And I'm actually looking forward to hearing it, and I want to make sure that I'm not mischaracterizing what he has to say. Jeff Johnson became a member. Oh, yeah. I see what you're saying. You want to be able to see the 2 and the 8. Got it. Okay. I'm with you. All right. There we go. I thought you were saying, there we go. That's somewhat better, right? Now it's all wonky. That's all right. At least you can see it. Gary, thoughts on Trump RFK pushing Gila monster venom therapy? I'm not familiar with this exactly. I mean, we have a lot of therapies that derive from poisons in nature. I don't know. I'll have to look into that. Jeff does. Not only does Jeff buy a lot of stuff from us, he helps us out in a lot of different ways too. So, including moderating here, but a lot of other things. Yeah, I'm not aware that Gray ever broke down the gun. I'm not sure what you're saying there. Yeah, look, you can. I think you have the ability to criticize Gray on, we'll say, his tone, right? But his words are pretty straight. I haven't found anything that's factually incorrect. You may disagree with his conclusions, is fine, but I mean, we're going to do that with everybody. He gets into it a little bit with people in his chat, and that's what he wants to do. It's it is what it is. Gray's my boy. I don't care what you say. I like him. This is way off topic, and don't let her to provide an answer. But what's your thoughts on Zoran Mamdani, the new mayor of New York City? I find it crazy. This came up earlier, Joe. I mean, I think it's nuts. I think it's crazy that they want to. I mean, forget about the fact that he's Muslim. I really don't care. But the fact that he's a communist. All right, just straight up a communist. So that's what they wanted, and that's what we have in the United States. We have this experiment where we have divided a country into 50 different states, and every single one can kind of self-govern to some extent. And then within those states, we have cities, and they can kind of self-govern to some extent too. I think what we're going to see is an additional mass exodus of New York. And unfortunately, what happens is when Democrats screw up a city or a state or whatever else, and everybody flees from it, those people that are, like they've gotten it. It's like, oh, all right, this is too much leftist politics. I'm going to go to another state that's great. And by the way, it just happens to be a Republican state. And then, they're still going to spread more leftist politics, and they're going to continue. Look what's happening to Virginia. Virginia's really went downhill in the last 10 or so years since I've lived in this area. I live like 20 minutes from Virginia, 20 minutes from Maryland. West Virginia, when I first got here, was really kind of a purple state. Man, it is deep, dark red now, and I love it. Me and my wife ultimately want to get south, get out of the snow, but I'll tell you, as far as the state goes, I love West Virginia. Beautiful people, beautiful country. Politics have just only improved since I've gotten here. Constitutional carry, guns and ammo are tax-free. They need to get rid of some income tax. That's a problem, but that's a whole nother story. All right, let me address this. This comes up a lot. And it said that Gray dogs his watchers for donations. He does mention it from time to time, right? That being said, like, man, this stuff ain't free. Like nothing we do here, it all costs money. It's not the way that I would approach it, but it's like people expect a lot out of you, and they don't understand the cost that it takes to do some of these things. And that's just a reality. It's like people talking about money in church. No, I don't think a church should have every single sermon should be talking about tithes and offering and passing the bucket around, whatever else. But it costs money. I mean, there's just some reality to some of those things where it's like you gotta, if you want these things to exist and you want this to be a source of information for you, you got to support it in different ways. Like it doesn't just, we're definitely not making, most of our videos get demonetized. Even if every single one of our videos got monetized, it's not a lot that comes from YouTube. There's a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of opportunity loss that goes into all this stuff. So someone like Gray that is doing that full time, and he puts a lot of work in puts a lot of work into the stuff that he does. I know what time goes into that between videoing it, preparing it, and all that other stuff. So, make it, if you really support a creator, make it to where they don't have to ask you for money, like hook them up in different ways. And I'm not saying us, I feel a little weird about doing that. What I will say is that, I hired a producer on, we want to go this route. And one of the conversations that he and I have been having is like, how do we turn this into a way that it can support itself, and we're not pulling from our business to support this stuff. And, we've explored different ways to monetize that. and monetize different areas. Like I never had memberships before. That'll help us out. I never did a lot of stuff on, exclusive things for Patreon accounts. I just didn't have time, but we're going to start dedicating some time, resources, and rethinking about how to make this thing a viable venture if that's what we want to do. And I do. I feel good about doing this. I feel like it's what we're supposed to be doing right now. We're still going to do all the other gun stuff, but I do want to do this. It isn't flawed. He said he broke the gun down off, but next day it was the old complete 30-06. Watch the videos. That is just, look, I think as new information comes out, I mean, Mr. Huff, we got to reevaluate what we're doing and what we're saying. The body armor thing is my thing. I don't know that there's anything else that may have changed my mind. I'm sure there is. Like, there's so many things that change so fast, and we find new updates and all this other stuff, and new video comes out. I mean, it's a fast-paced moving thing. What I can tell you, look, the only thing that I want out of the people that I watch is that you're giving me the truth as you know it. And I think that Gray is a great source for that. Not only is he a great source for the truth, the technical expertise in the way that he can tell a story and the way that he puts things together and gives you a presentation. His presentation is like nobody else does out there. So, I mean, I think he's worth watching, and I, give him a little grace too. If we want grace, we got to give grace to people. Sometimes I think we miss the fact why all this is going on. That's Charlie's gone. He was such an amazing, unique person. I just pray that justice is done. I agree. I was thinking about this election results. I think this election was, I don't know how big of a difference, but I know if Charlie was alive, the election results, these midterms would have gone differently. I don't know if it would have changed who was or wasn't voted in or not for sure. There's no way of saying that. But I do think there's a good chance that it would have changed somewhat significantly. I do think the numbers would be different. And I do think that there is right now on the Republican side, there's less energy. And I think there would be significantly more energy if Charlie Kirk was around. So, whether it was Tyler Robinson or somebody else that was behind all this, to some degree, what they wanted to accomplish wasn't done by the act. It was all of the fallout after the act that is accomplishing what they wanted to accomplish. I think there's some people out there that are claiming to love Charlie, to care about Charlie. They want truth for Charlie. They want justice for Charlie, and they're damaging Charlie's legacy in ways that I don't think they really understand or just don't care about. Look, I think this is a fair assessment. And I think Gray would agree. Gray is pretty grumpy and rough when you don't agree. That's why I listen very little, although he is very good technically. So that's probably fair. What do you make of the fact that when Candace revealed the text message of Charlie saying he was going to abandon pro-Israel cause, Andrew Colvett said they gave that SC to the police. Screenshot. I'm not sure what Joseph, clarify that for me. I'm sorry. Yeah, Christopher, and I'll give you that. Look, I mean, all it did is prove me wrong, right? I'll give you'll within a week, you'll have, I think is pretty good evidence that you'll have an eyewitness statement. I'll just put it that you can determine whether or not you find that eyewitness statement credible or not. Doesn't just go, yeah. Werewolf 6 is talking about the Mike theory. The boom doesn't just go in one direction. I'm assuming that's what you're saying. That's correct. I would like to have the TPUSA security guys as guests. Stand by. I'll just leave that out there. Slight correction. Hold on. There was just another AC, slight correction. Mamdani is not a communist. He's a Democrat socialist like Bernie and like in Denmark and Sweden. That's what he says he is. He is a communist that identifies as a Democrat socialist because that's much more palatable here in the United States. And by the way, like something like 66%, I saw a stat, don't quote me on this, but I generally think I think I'm getting this right. It's something shocking, like 66% of youth think that communism is good. Maybe it's Democrat youth, something along those lines, but communism is now in favor in the United States by a large portion of the people, and that's a real problem that we have. And no, I don't think he's just a socialist. I think he's a straight-on communist. You know, he's a socialist in name only. He's a sinner. So if you use low power, old ammo, how do you explain the viewed energy displacement or the strike still being on target? Well, even low powered, even if it's just barely above supersonic, I mean, we definitely know that it was supersonic, period. All right. We have supersonic cracks that have been recorded on audio, so we know it's supersonic. So it's a lot of energy no matter what. The problem is, look, when we have an exit, this is why we have frangible ammunition and why we have expanding or hollow point ammunition, right? There's defensive style ammunition or other special purpose ammunition. So I think we hopefully we can agree that if you have a 124 grain bullet projectile out of a 9mm, if it is a standard full metal jacket, it's 124 grains. It leaves the muzzle at, we'll say, 1,500 feet per second. That bullet is almost guaranteed to exit the body. If we have a 124 grain hollow point, it's leaving the muzzle at 1,500 feet per second, hits the exact same target, the exact same distance. But when it goes inside the body, it mushrooms, it opens up, it expands, it dumps all of its energy into the target. All right. They started off the same amount of energy, but because of a bullet or projectile design, one left the body and expended most of its energy outside the body, which is going to be a less lethal round. All right. When we can get more of the energy to be displaced and to be transferred to the body itself, as opposed to an exit where a lot of the energy is carried outside of the body, that is less likely to be lethal. So if we have that fragments, that does all these things that are going to displace its own energy and leave most of that energy inside the body as opposed to exiting. And because if you have rounds, look, the thing with hunting rounds is they're built for penetration. That's the problem that everybody can't seem to wrap their head around. Like, they are built to penetrate large-bodied animals deeply, right? That's what they want, because if you use some of these rounds on a deer or a moose or whatever else, it's not going to penetrate very far. Their hides are tougher than ours, all of these things. So they're made for maximum penetration or a certain amount of penetration. They're designed for penetration, whereas other rounds are not designed for penetration. They're specifically designed to not penetrate all the way through. Like, this isn't rocket surgery, it's basic ballistics, and we see it used all the time. That's why, here's another great example. And when we had multiple rounds available to us in 5.56. We also have multiple rounds available to us in the 30 cal and some other calibers as well, 50 cal. Depending on the mission, depending on what's going on, we would use different rounds for different reasons and mission sets and everything else, right? In Iraq, we didn't see a lot of insurgents and things like that using body armor at all. There was a couple of incidents where we found people in a house wearing body armor. So what we were finding was that green tip that, you know, is running at 2,800 feet per second, thereabouts, whatever else, you know, 62 grain is green tip. 62 grain green tip. And people would get shot with green tip. Bad guys would get shot with green tip and you wouldn't see them move or anything else. It's a lot of energy. It's a lot of energy, but that green tip would do what we call ice pick through them. All right. It's zip right through them. All right. And those guys would continue to run around. They're still in the fight, even though they got hit with a high velocity bullet, but most of its energy was dispersed outside the body. Well, at some point we switched to 77 grain and some other projectiles and bullets that we got from other groups that, again, similar velocity, similar energy, but completely different terminal ballistic results. I'm not going to say that. That might get me in trouble with YouTube. But what I'll tell you is they weren't walking those things off. Once we switched ammo and realized what was going on, they weren't walking those off. It's the same thing that we saw in the Korean War when they were switching, in Vietnam War when they were switching from 45 to 9 mil. Everybody, you know, thinks that 45 is just super lethal round. All right, it's fairly slow. It is larger, but the thing that it had going for it, because it had basically a much larger diameter, it was slowed down by the tissue, and we had more of the energy dump into the body. When they switched over to full metal jacket 9mm, we have a faster moving round. It has there's pretty similar when it comes to overall energy, but it was just zipping through, ice picking through people, and we were having very different results. So the idea came about that, you know, 9 mil was ineffective for combat and everything else. But once you start going to full, you know, different hollow points and different defensive rounds that are designed to dump that energy in the body, you have completely different results with the exact same caliber. And, you know, people that say, you know, 9mm is not great for self-defense, they don't know what they're talking about. They're using the wrong, their experience with that is anecdotal and it's not truthful. And this is exactly what we're seeing with this whole 30-06 debate. Yeah, that's one of the things I brought up. The mic still had to function. We had to have all this like high-speed stuff in here, but it still had to function. Now, the answer to that would be it actually wasn't recording. It wasn't actually a functional mic, that it was just a fake mic. So, you know, there's that. Oh, like regardless of body armor or not, you know, we explained me in a group chat. I did come up with it. I'm gonna claim it. I thought immediately what was happening with the necklace and with the shirt going up, which I do think is the cross going up where the shirt goes up to his left ear. Within like a week of that, I proposed the idea that, you know, what we had was massive cavitation in the neck area. And because the cross with the necklace was hanging on the back of his neck, this expanded so rapidly, so violently, faster than you guys can imagine, and faster, and the forces are greater than most people even understand how quick that expansion takes place. So if that necklace is hanging on the back of the neck and this area expands really quick, it's going to accelerate the necklace up. It's going to pull it up from there. It's hanging from the chain, from, you know, the weight that we have right there is the necklace itself, or the cross pendant. It accelerates it up quickly. This comes up. It actually pulls the t-shirt with it because it's so violent. It's so powerful. And then ultimately ends up snapping because of those forces at play. And then one of the guys in our group chat, first he said, no, that's not possible. But then he actually he's an engineer. He did a bunch of math. He was like, Gary, I think you're exactly right. Not only is it possible, that's most likely what happened, regardless of whether or not there was body armor or anything else. So I've thought from the beginning that that's what explains the necklace. That is one of the things that I'm going to be testing and again, I don't know if it's going to replicate it because we're talking about very different things, but with the torsos, the head and torsos that we have with the ballistic gel dummies, I think we can get, very close to that. And I think the same physics will apply. Friendly reminder, please hit the like, subscribe button, all those things. That helps us out as well. Oh, I see what you're saying. You're talking about, I did see that. So I'm not a fan of Ozempic. We've had a couple of different doctors, medical professionals on. We need to have them on again. I'm not a fan of Ozempic if you're going to be using it nonstop. I do think, look, obesity is a real problem, and there's some people that are struggling with it. And I think long-term use with Ozempic or anything like that. And the other problem with Ozempic is a lot of the weight that's lost, or a significant amount of the weight that's lost, it ends up being muscle. You can't offset that if you're working out. You probably need to also look at, if you're a man, I would definitely look at some testosterone therapy. That may be leading to your obesity to begin with, and lack of drive, lack of motivation, lack of wanting to get out and exercise, all this. But some of it does come down to just self-discipline. So I think Ozempic could be used effectively, even with all its negative side effects. It could help the general population. The problem with Ozempic, just like so many other issues when it comes to prescription drugs, is it's going to be abused by the users. Instead of developing self-discipline, there's just more chemical dependence. And then on top of that, it's going to be overprescribed because it's very profitable. So that's kind of how I feel about Ozempic. But there's some people that are benefiting from it, and I would be remiss to say that it doesn't. What people thought? Did people really think that was a screen? That's the real deal. I just changed it up there. I change it all the time. Is there any such thing as a device capable of shooting a bullet that is made of dry ice, whatever it's made of? Not that I'm aware of. Which woman? I mean, there's probably, forget about dry ice. I'm sure there's we could create some sort of chemical reactions that can propel something at a velocity that could be lethal. I'm not aware of anything. I mean, but there are chemical reactions that I'm sure do that. But we still run into, if you propel something this way, whatever it's in goes this way. This is the basic fundamentals behind recoil of a gun. The reason that we feel the punch is because we're throwing everything out that way. If I put a rifle here and it was just sitting here on the table, and we shoot something out with X amount of pounds of force, and we pull the trigger here, and this rifle isn't braced up against something, the rifle's going to move significantly rearward too. We have an equal and opposite reaction. And that's the problem that I have with the microphone theory. But again, we're going to have Blake on, and he's going to explain. I know, Chris. I know it's crooked. It's not sitting on a level surface. I was moving it for that young lady that asked me to move it because she didn't like the fact that we could only see the two. So there's that. I want to know whether the round that killed Charlie was forensically matched the rifle found in the woods. Sure. I mean, I think it has been. We're not going to see that till the trial. They'll easily be able to do it. So, I mean, I don't know that you would think that they wouldn't. I don't know that everybody understands how rounds are matched to rifles. If there's enough of it, we will have rifling that will match the rifling we'll have the marks that are left on the projectile from the lands and grooves of the rifle. All right. You can forensically match those to the rifle itself. That's kind of old school and old technology. What we have now today, and we still do that. Now, if there's not enough left of that bullet and it's enough fragments, you may not be able to do that. They can still match that projectile metallurgically to the rifle and to the other ammunition that they're using. So what they're going to do is they're going to, every batch of ammunition, every batch of copper, every batch of lead or whatever else they use in that core is basically has a fingerprint, and they can put that stuff under an electron microscope and they can see exactly the components that are used that are matched to that. They'll be able to take another bullet and be able to forensically match it to that bullet as well, metallurgically. I'd almost guarantee that they could also match, and this is speculation on my part, the rifle itself, there's going to be metallic transfer from the lands and grooves to the jacketing of that round, and that's assuming that it was a jacketed round. Could be just a lead projectile, right? They could have, just bought some. I have some up there, right, for my 4570. So, but either way, there's metal transfers both ways. You're going to have some of whatever the projectile is made of left, and chemical traces of that left into the rifle, and then the metal from the rifle is also going to get transferred. The metal from the projectile is also going to be left on the cartridge, the brass cartridge that holds it as well, and vice versa. So I'm sure they'll be able to match all that stuff. I can tell you for sure they can definitely match that bullet, that projectile, to the rest of the projectiles that were unfired. And that right there, between the DNA on the gun, hey, there's a metallurgical chemical match to the rest of the ammunition. We're going to see all that, and I guarantee you they have it. Ryan Patterson, I do ELR competitions and wanting to upgrade to a Masterpiece Arms and 6-dasher. What is the difference between ordering from you and the website? There's a couple things. Number one, we're going to be there to give you more technical advice than MPA will. The other thing too is that if you order from us and you want other accessories, anytime that you order an entire package from us, we always try to help you out with it. There's not a lot to discount on the rifle itself. We just don't make money on selling rifles. We make money by selling accessories. That's where any significant profit is, or any decent amount of profit is. Profit margin is still low in the gun industry. Like, look, guys, if you want to, if someone had told me, if I would have told me as I was getting into the retail sales of firearms, I'd have been like, look, stop, Gary. Here's what you can expect for profits after all of these things, right? I've heard it said, if you want a small fortune in the gun industry, you need to start out with a large fortune. That being said, the other big thing here is, number one, there's no downside to it, Ryan. You're not going to wait longer. We're going to be able to give you more technical advice. We're going to be there to troubleshoot if there's any issues. And then lastly, you get to help two great companies, right? You get to help us. We're a dealer for MPA. We're one of their top dealers, and we'll help you out. So buy from us, bud. Support what we do, and you get to support MPA at the same time. Two of us. As an Aussie without access to much gun education, I do have enough to look into the injuries. This explanation has helped. Thank you, sir. Could the engravings Robinson made the bullet? Could the engravings Robinson made to the bullets affect the integrity of the bullets? It depends. It will change some things for sure. I don't know if it. I'd have to know how he engraved them and what he did to it. As I understand it, he engraved the casings, not the projectile. So not the bullet itself, and again, when we talk about ammunition, just so that we're technically accurate, you have the cartridge itself, which is the complete ammunition. Within that cartridge, what you have is a or within that, within the cartridge, what you have is the brass shell casing. You have the primer itself, you have the powder, and then you have the projectile. The projectile, also known as a bullet. All right, but the entire, we often call, hey, hand me another bullet. But that is not a bullet. That technically is a cartridge, just so that we're all speaking the same language and we understand what we're saying. My understanding is that the engravings were done on the shell casings. That could affect, you would definitely see some sort of effect. Anytime that you make things inconsistent, you will get inconsistent results. I don't know if it was a big enough effect to see what we saw. Could he have done something while he's sitting there grinding on that bullet, or on the, see, I did it, on the cartridge or on the shell casing itself? Could he have started doing something to the projectile that would cause what we see? That's another possibility. We don't know. So he could have, started grinding on the projectile itself. That definitely would have caused some issues. And it's very possible that he did. Can't be ruled out, that's for sure. Tanya, thank you very much. I'm sticking to 30-06 just to, if I'm right, 3 to 4 years from now, ballistic report and trial. Okay, I'm not sure. Ozempic has been shown to help prevent dementia like Alzheimer's. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that, and look, here's my problem with any of these studies that come out from, just like we saw with vaccines, we see how these pharmaceutical companies conduct studies. They're not real. The problem is we don't have any real third-party objective labs or anything else that are doing any sort of long-term studies. And Ozempic's been out for a very limited amount of time too. So I don't know what we can talk about the long-term study of either one of those, good, bad, or indifferent. So there's no long-term studies for sure. And my problem is they might find that in some cases it helps Alzheimer's, but simultaneously they're hiding all these other negative impacts, and all they're going to do is promote like this minor positive one. Nicotine helps with Alzheimer's too, but you don't hear everybody saying, start using nicotine. Methylene blue helps with Alzheimer's and lots of different dementia issues. We don't hear people pushing. I mean, well, there's definitely some people out there promoting methylene blue. I take it every single day. You should look into it. I think it has a huge net positive effect. I noticed a difference. I didn't take it today, which is why I can't hardly form a thought. But it definitely helps with mental acuity and protects you from lots of different things, including malaria, by the way. People used to take methylene blue as an anti-malarial back in World War II. Speaking of which, we're going to have Chase Hughes on. I think he's scheduled for December 5th. If you don't know who Chase Hughes is, go research him. He's a pretty cool person. He was on the Joe Rogan show, and we're going to have him on a guest. I'm really excited to talk to him. I find him pretty fascinating in some of the work that he does. All right. Like 2 more questions. We got to shut this thing down. Yeah, I've actually heard him say this. Hey, if you can't afford to give, don't give. All right. I mean, traveling to UVU for all of us isn't cheap. Travel alone, not to mention time. Yeah. So we definitely took time out of our business and everything else to traveling there. I mean, it definitely was definitely over $5,000 out of my personal money to travel to UVU for literally a day, between flights that I paid for, lodging for me and another person, flights for me and another person. The flights were crazy expensive. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't nothing. Has anyone questioned why CK was sitting on the platform? I've never seen him elevated like that. He's usually seated in a seat on the ground. That is a question that we will get an answer to hopefully this week. Maybe. That is another true thing about Gray. He donates a lot of money to several different causes. I can't remember what he was telling me he was donating to. But that was a conversation that we had in while we were at UVU. Give him credit, spending hours on videos and getting not many views must be really frustrating. I get asking for something else. Understand it can get annoying. I watch him and he's good at what he does. He is very good at what he does. And that's true. Look, here's the thing, man. What Gray does, and what I try to do too, is I try to stay away from clickbait nonsense. And really, if you want to get the views and all that other stuff, I mean, there's a clear formula what works. I mean, the #1 podcast proves it. So I'd rather truth than somebody asking me for some money from time to time to support what I'm enjoying and what I believe to be true and what I think is someone as a good faith actor. Like, I don't know. Everybody's beating up on Gray. That's right. Only domestic. I don't know what that is. Gary hooks his viewers up. So yeah, like, I do try to. When we hit 200,000, 200,000 subscribers, we did a giveaway. We gave away over $5,000 worth of stuff. We're gonna do $10,000 come 300,000. So make sure you stand by for that giveaway. And you know, we try to bring value to you in many different ways as well. Why was he looking around to see if he was being watched? Why wouldn't you wait until police showed up and made sure it was retrieved instead of tamper evidence and stand on a chair shot? Honor, again, I mean, I don't consider it tampering with evidence. Like, all he did was secure the evidence. Like, if that's the way that you view it, I think that, that can be, it's probably a fair criticism, but you're asking someone to think about all these things in the heat of the moment. When you see things like, nobody's thinking about evidence like, oh God, I should preserve all this evidence. What he's thinking is like, all right, I need to get that film. People are stealing stuff off this table. My friend just died. Like, we can't even imagine what's going on in somebody's head. It's like, it's like saying that if, something happened to your family and there's a video of it and you move some things around afterward under stress or whatever else, and then somebody's like, oh, well, you tampered with evidence. Like, no, I was just in the moment doing what I thought I should do. I think it's, I don't know. I think that criticism is a little strange to me. I think it's very reasonable what happened given the circumstances. And I think pretending it's not is unfair and a little bit, well, it's just unfair. We'll leave it at that. No, the FBI never said he broke it back down on the roof. The governor said that and was wrong. That's correct. That was some bad information that Governor Cox, he's a politician. He's not a law enforcement person. He was the only person that ever put out that Tyler broke down after he took the shot. He broke it down. Like, Governor Cox is kind of a moron to begin with, and he's a politician. You combine those two, you're just going to get stupid from flowing from the mouth at a high rate of speed. I addressed that comment. I know I'm always like 10 minutes behind comments, and I apologize. Stephen NUFC Warbird became a member. Thank you, Stephen. We appreciate the matter of fact. Let me display it up here. Let me give you the props you deserve, bro. All right. Anybody else that wants to become a member, we appreciate it. We appreciate it. It's what all the cool kids are doing. Become a member. Help us out a little bit here. Yeah, this is another great point. Is the crime scene essentially Charlie Kirk himself, the rooftop, the wooded area? The camera belongs to TPUSA. They secured it and handed it over to the FBI. They didn't tamper with evidence. They secured evidence. They protected evidence based on their assessment of the situation at the time. All right, you can go back and you can criticize them if you want. I think it's just I think it's unfair. Thanks for always providing such great info. Enjoy your podcast better than most. It's more thorough and relevant than most. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. One of these days, I'm going to get much more efficient at like moving information around. I got to get, you know what? I'm going to fly Gray out here and host him for a week. And like, hey, set my monitors up and show me how to use all the whiz bang stuff he does. Some of the conspiracy theories at just not critical and rational thinking at all. It's frustrating. I agree with that. That is frustrating. And it's also frustrating how convinced some people are without any evidence. Like I'm confused by that. I'm concerned by that. And, you know, all we can do is do what we can on this channel to crush down and tamp down misinformation. Vika Stanjowski. Oh, gotta switch mice because one failed on me. One fails on me, and I go back to the other one. I don't know what's going on. MAGA is the biggest fraud in America. I disagree with you, but thankfully here in America, you can voice your opinion. Already did that one. All right. This is also true about Gray. Again, he's just, you know, you may not like his personality sometimes, but he's an honest broker of information. If you want truth, you can go there. At least what he believes to be the truth, right? He may get some things wrong. You may disagree with him, and that's okay. But Lisa says also about Gray, makes the best at the time. Once more info comes out, he lets it be known the screwdriver found on the roof is what led to many to assume Tyler used it for something. I do think he used it for something. I think he put the rifle back together. I think it was disassembled. I think the stock was removed from the action. That requires two screws. There's two screws. They're called action screws that attach a stock to the action. And I think that those were disassembled so that he could hide it easier. I saw some people claiming Erica Kirk was lying because she kept batting her eyes with tissues, even if it's tears or nervous reaction. Imagine that being your critique on all of this. Sad. It's brain rot. Buff, I don't even think that we're disagreeing. I'm not sure if it's true or not, but it's fine. Let's say that you're correct, that Gray got it wrong, that he watched on the first video, he says he broke down the gun again. Fair. All right. He got it wrong. He's corrected it. I know he doesn't believe that now, and I know he didn't believe that shortly afterwards. So there's that. Kalek, I'll be doing that very shortly. I'll be doing that very soon. I talked about that just a little while ago. I agree with this. What TPUSA did is better than some thief stealing the camera. Agreed. Yeah, that is true. As far as we know, that's true. I do believe that he reassembled the rifle when he got on the roof. Yeah, they could have, that they didn't. All right, that's fine. They could have done that, but they didn't. They didn't know if they were going to be cleared out of there. They didn't know what was going on. I mean, you're not there. You didn't experience this. And everybody else out there that are so critical, I would like to see you. This reminds me of there was a politician. I have to pull this up sometime. This politician was talking about, you know, police brutality, and, you know, they deployed their guns too quick and they did all these things wrong or whatever else. So the police actually reached out to this politician, had them come do some force on force training and put them in some scenarios, no shoot and no shoot scenarios. And there was a person, and during one of these scenarios, this politician is now acting like a cop, and he has simunitions. All right. So, and then they have role players that are acting like bad guys or potential bad guys. And, you know, this politician, from what I remember, is giving this person instructions like, get on the ground, get on. And this person just keeps walking forward, doesn't even have a weapon. And the politician ends up freaking out and shooting the bad guy that presented no threat. He wasn't following commands. It would be it was not a good shoot. We'll just leave it at that. All right. He shot a person with no weapon only because he was under stress and that person wasn't following the commands. So this is my point is people, until you're there doing stuff, in the same way with like people talk about what they would do in combat, or, you know, I had friends before we went to combat that said they were going to do this and said they were going to do this and had all these dreams of how they would perform in combat. And guess what? When the shit hit the fan, they were wrong. So like, you can't, you guys, like, we weren't there. I agree with this. People do love drama. Look, that's part of where some of this is coming from. How long would assembling the rifle take? There's not a lot of time from when he reacts to the roof. It'd take about a minute or less. It's 2 screws. It's 2 screws. That's all it takes. Well, again, I don't know. Maybe there's lots of people that have done this already on YouTube. I've thought about recreating this, but I'm like, it's been done to death. Maybe we should. Yep. Exactly what David said. Less than a minute. I put rifles together all the time. Takes me 1 minute. All right, Evika, I'm just going to say this. If you're going to troll the chat, I'm going to ban you. You can participate in this conversation, but if we're just going to go with we're just trolling now, right? And you're just spamming the chat with free Palestine this, free Palestine that. I don't have a problem with you stating that every now and then, but, you know, you say he wasn't thinking, oh, grab evidence, but he thought I better grab the SD card, not the entire camera, because people were stealing. Okay. That's literally what I said. He was trying to preserve the evidence. He was thinking about that. Like how can you twist that around? I mean, again, Mally girl, you're being intellectually dishonest. I just said that. He wasn't worried about necessarily the camera. He was worried about what he thought was the evidence, to preserve the evidence. Like, he preserved the evidence. He gave, like, we would have a different conversation if suddenly that SD card was missing, right? But that SD card isn't missing. He handed it over to the FBI. We know that for a fact. And if it was somehow manipulated when it was handed over to the FBI, before it was handed over to the FBI, look, their forensics team would spot that in a second. The fact is he preserved the evidence. That's a fact. Like, you can try to twist this in something that's not, but it's intellectually dishonest. All right. Huff, you gotta let this thing go with Gray. All right. I don't care if he said the wrong thing. Just let it go. Let it go. He's definitely corrected the record, if it was wrong to begin with. And you're probably right. If the TPUSA camera was evidence, then wouldn't every camera in the venue be considered evidence, including every phone that took live video? It's a great point. It definitely is considered evidence. I don't want to be intellectually dishonest on the other end of that, right? It's definitely evidence. And technically all of those cameras are evidence, but you can't say that he tampered with evidence when like even him standing on the chair, forensically, what did that change? Even if he stepped in Charlie's blood on a chair, I don't think there was his blood on the chair. Maybe there was some on there. I don't know, but I don't think he did any damage to the actual evidence. Mary Melanowski says, Gary, just what it take for you to watch videos that you were mentioned, because I have some that you might be interested in. You can send it to dlpodcast at paramount-tactical.com. dlpodcast at paramount-tactical.com. This banner right there. There you go. dlpodcast at paramount-tactical.com. Oh, Stephen, did you see Gary? Did you see Valhalla yesterday? Show they were ignored. They ignored the EMT trying to hand them bags. What would have had everything needed? I would have ignored them too, because if I was on that detail, and I also know that this is true, and again, we're gonna have a podcast about this pretty soon. I don't know what was in that bag, but nothing in that bag would have changed anything that was going on. And I can tell you the security detail had everything they needed in the bag. They had a full trauma kit in the bag. So all the EMTs were doing was wasting time. I think there were likely people on that detail, considering the injuries, that were as trained or could do as much as the EMTs could do at that point. Their number one priority at that point, because they already had medical gear, for sure, that's a fact. They had all the medical gear that they needed to do what was to address that. I don't care if they ignored. I would have ignored them people too. Like if my kid was laying out here in the yard and he had some sort of traumatic injury, and I address that traumatic injury, and the next thing was get him to the highest level of care. If somebody come out of the woods and was like, Gary, here's a whole another bag of medical gear, like I already have all the medical gear, what, I don't need you, I need to get my kid to the next higher level of care, and all you're doing is wasting my time right now because I have all that stuff. So everything that could have been used outside of real blood and some other potentially surgical interventions that could have been, it wouldn't have saved his life, but at the time that you could possibly think of, if I was laying there and seeing what I saw, like, number one, Charlie needs blood. He needs some surgical intervention here. The only thing I can do right now, the only thing that can be done right now is to stop the bleeding. That's it. All right. So we have an acronym. All right. MARCH, massive hemorrhaging, airway, respiration, circulation, and prevent hypothermia. So everything that could be done until we get to another level of care that can provide whole blood and or surgical interventions was there. I don't know. Well, I'll just leave it at that. So all they were doing is wasting their time at that point. This summarizes everything about this case. We believe all sorts of things. We know very little, and everyone is filling in the blanks with assumptions, the worst possible assumptions, the least likely scenarios and assumptions that are possible. Like that's what is filling in the gap, unfortunately. All right. Yeah, I agree with this person. I could be wrong. I don't watch every episode of his, but I was watching him very regularly when this first broke down, and I don't ever remember him saying he broke down the gun, but he could have. All right, he could have gotten it wrong in one of the very first episodes. Yeah, I generally agree with this statement right here. If the TPUSA camera, no, last one. I don't think he tampered with evidence. Securing the camera was no different than everyone else who left with their phones, who took video. To some degree, yes. All right. I don't think he tampered with evidence. We'll just leave it at that. I think he was, look, this guy was forced into a situation he'd never been before, and then was having to make a decision that he'd never made before or never imagined making before. I still think it's the right decision. I think it was 100% the correct thing to do. And you can take that, his actions, and be like, oh, he acted weird, he acted suspicious, he killed him. Like that's your conclusion. Like no matter what, you take all of his actions, and then you factor in that he handed that SD card over to the FBI. He secured the evidence. There is no logical conclusion that should end. he was in on it because he acted weird and he tampered with evidence, secured the evidence. Like, it's like jumping over the Gulf of Mexico to go from it's illogical. It is. Well, how do we know they had all the stuff like clamps and gauze? They wouldn't necessarily need clamps and gauze, but they definitely had gauze. I guarantee you they had hemostats. And again, we'll have answers to that. How do you know that they didn't? Is my question to you. You'll have an answer on that very soon, DD Ray. I won't even answer. I know the answer to this. I'm wondering if his security team knew he was dead on the scene, and that's why they didn't do all the life-saving techniques that one would normally do. I think they did do all the life-saving techniques that they would normally do. Folks, if you haven't seen my video, matter of fact, I'm going to list it down here. I know most people haven't seen it. It's highly suppressed on not only has it been demonetized, but it's been restricted on YouTube. I'm going to give you a link to the video that I did. You should watch this video no matter what, because number one, I teach you some really important life-saving techniques. I show you exactly what I think they actually used and what they were doing behind, that table. So please go watch this. And YouTube is some communists for suppressing this video. So I'm going to put this link in the video. Please go watch this video. It is at least an alternative and more likely alternative to what people are saying they did behind that table that I think you need to at least consider. All right, folks, we're going to call it a night. Man, we went almost 4 hours. I didn't realize we'd gone that long. 4 hours flew by, didn't it? It was great talking to you guys. And again, what I wanted to do tonight, I try to do from time to time, is just do a show that we try to flush out all the questions. We give you guys, unfettered access to me. It sounds egotistical to even say, but I look, I know a lot of people, I see the emails, all of this stuff. I'm still sorting through emails. I'm still hundreds of emails behind. DMs on X and everywhere else. If you're not following us on X, please go follow us on X. I want to continue to build that out. I think X is going to end up being the future of videos and hopefully one day replace YouTube. I don't think Rumble, unfortunately, I wish they would, but I don't think they're going to do it. But I think X will. And I think X is moving that direction. Not only that, I post on a regular on X. So if we're ever pulled off or we get another strike on YouTube, you want an immediate answer, that's usually where I'm going. I can't post anything on YouTube when that happens. So go follow me on X for constant updates and some other things. And we'll do some X exclusive stuff as well. So go follow us on X. It's also a great platform to get news if you know who to follow, because there's some folks out there that are doing great work out there. No, Kimberly, you're the best. You're the best. Yeah. Anyways. All right, folks. I'm going to call it a night. I'm going to take Tanya's advice. Call it a night. Thanks, you guys, for supporting us. Thank you guys for tuning in and all those things. So anyways, my mouse quit working on here. I can't even do this in a timely manner now. There we go. There we go. Anyways, folks, thanks for tuning in. And until next time, make sure you join us tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, we're going to be putting out the 3D, all the 3D stuff tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Then join us tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to give you a tutorial on so that you know how to work it, so that it works as it should. Make sure we go through all the settings. It's a complicated program, not super user friendly, but anyways, I want you to be able to use it and use it effectively. But until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you.